Chapter 2342. The competition for the expert ranking began. First, the strongest member from each of the top 100 teams would be chosen as the representative. Schools like Eternal Dragon Academy and Three Visions Academy would definitely be represented by Huai Jian and Ruin Star. However, it was hard to say for other academies because they did not have an Emperor Star and the strength of the others was similar. They needed to discuss internally before choosing a representative. Based on Seven Frost and Yuan's temperament, they did not want Ling Han to be the representative of 100 Battle Academy. It was his fault for not putting in any effort before. However, when they thought about it again, they still had to count on Ling Han in the next 1000 Academy tournament. They could only submit him with a sour expression. After these 100 people were decided, the next step was to divide them into groups. The Four Brilliance Academy's Ancestral King personally decided on 16 seeded participants. These 16 people could not meet before the quarterfinals. This was to prevent experts who were too strong from meeting each other early. Then, it was a double elimination to give everyone more chances and keep as many strong people as possible. Because there were only 100 people, there were inevitably 28 groups that were luckier. There were only 3 people, and only one person needed to be eliminated to pass. Ling Han was also listed as a seeded participant because of his stunning attack. However, he was mocked by many people. A person who did not even care about the Academy's glory was bound to have limited achievements. The gambling house gave out the odds as usual. Huai Jian's odds actually increased, and it was not by a little bit. It reached a high of 1, 2. Naturally, this was because of the rise of Moon in Well, Blood Spear, and other Super Emperor stars. The gambling house thought that they were a threat to Huai Jian's position as the overlord. Moon in Well and Blood Spear's odds were as low as 1, 2, 1 and 2, 2, 2. They were definitely the best candidates. In comparison, Ling Han's odds were much higher, reaching 1, 4. Ling Han decisively bet on himself. He had an invincible heart. So what if he had opponents like Huai Jian and Moon in Well? He firmly believed that he would win. Another 7 days later, the first stage of the expert ranking began. Ling Han's luck was not good. He was not assigned to a group of 3. The first match was against an 11-leaf Emperor Star. This was a member of the insect race. It had a blood-red body and was shaped like a ladybug. Its wings were spread open, and there were blood-colored patterns all over its body. A single glance at it would cause one to be sucked in and lose control of their thoughts. You admitted defeat in the team battle. Why don't you do the same now? The insect said in a bewitching voice. It guaranteed that even emperors would follow its orders. His clan was best at bewitching people. Ling Han smiled. Because I want to beat you up. He dashed out and punched out angrily. The bug race was shocked. Not only was Ling Han not bewitched by him, he was not affected at all. This was too exaggerated. He hastily rejoined the fight. However, at the same rank, the difference in evolution index between a rank 11 and rank 10 was too great. It was like an emperor crushing a monarch. Ling Han had the upper hand as soon as the fight began. In just over 80 moves, he destroyed one of the bug race's legs and one of its wings. This was because the bug race member relied too much on the power of bewitchment. Naturally, his combat strength was inferior to the other Emperor stars. In the end, as long as Ling Han was not affected by his bewitchment, he could not even last 100 moves. Ling Han entered the winner's bracket without a hitch. The battle on the other side of the bracket came to an end as well. The winner was a Devil Tribe member. They did not rest and immediately began the competition in the winner's bracket. In the end, Ling Han easily won this round and was the first to enter the top 64. The remaining 3 members of the group were not hopeless. They could still fight for the last spot. The remaining 2 would have to fight for the top 65 to 100th place. According to the rules, Ling Han had 5 days to rest before he had to fight for the top 32. Ling Han did not waste any time. He woke up the sleeping Wall and discussed with him. Normally, Wall would be in a state called hibernation mode. According to him, this would consume less energy and only maintain his information processing function. Ling Han did not understand. Anyway, this guy was no different from a block of wood. Everything was the same. He was very interested in the knowledge of higher planes. Knowledge was wealth and power. He did not mind mastering more. Moreover, he also knew that if he wanted to become the strongest, he would have to master the formulas and models that Wall had mentioned. This involved the essence of heaven and earth. The rules were only the embodiment of the power of heaven and earth. They could be completely broken and surpassed. Therefore, focusing on the rules and diligently pursuing them was actually going in the wrong direction. Of course, without reaching the highest realm, one did not have the qualifications to touch the power of heaven and earth. It was impossible to find the right direction. But Ling Han was different. He had the magic cube of origin and was once the ruler of heaven and earth. He could defy the heavens and touch the power of heaven and earth in advance. Most importantly, he was lucky to meet Wall, the crystallization of countless eras of wisdom and material resources in the Xian Ni plane. He also went to a higher plane to learn all the knowledge. Otherwise, he could only fumble around in the dark. Even if his intelligence was 100 times higher and his talent was 10,000 times stronger, it would still be useless. Wall was extremely generous in this aspect. If he wanted to hide it, he would not have told these things to Ling Han in the past. Under the reincarnation tree, Ling Han's mind was filled with the formulas and models that Wall had mentioned. He felt a little dizzy. He was confident that he was not an idiot. However, when it came to these formulas, he seemed to have become an idiot. He could not understand them at all. He first used thousands of years to master the formulas. Then he combined these formulas to deduce and prove the model. This made the model come alive and not just exist on paper. Finally, he combined it with the magic cube of origin to drive the model to operate. Currently, Wall only gave him a model. If he could successfully drive it to operate, then he could extract the virtual energy. This was one of the most fundamental powers of the origin world. Even if he could only extract a trace of it, it would be extremely powerful. However, Ling Han's realm was too low. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for him to extract the virtual energy. He had to go to the core of the foreign plane or mine ores that contain the virtual energy. Only then would he be able to extract the virtual energy. Theoretically speaking, the core of the plane is always in a state of eruption. So, there must be such ores that can be found. However, other than creatures with a life index of more than 15,000 points, no one else can sense them. Naturally, they are like stubborn rocks, Wall said calmly. His emotions did not fluctuate at all, except when he talked about the scroll that could not be opened. Ling Han thought for a while and said, "Can I absorb the virtual energy in that scroll?" Theoretically. Wall nodded. However, he immediately shook his head. "But this is mine now. I won't let you use it. It will hurt my interests," he said seriously. Ling Han could not help but laugh out loud. Wall was really a straightforward person. Of course, he did not have any ideas about Wall. This was because he still had a scroll that could not be opened. After finding an excuse, Ling Han went into seclusion again. He took out another scroll that could not be opened and tried to extract the power from it. Chapter 2344. This scene caused everyone's scalp to go numb. Isn't that amazing? You can fight an 11-leaf Emperor Star without using the rules? Are you kidding me? Rules were the foundation of one's battle prowess. Even an 18 Lotus Ancestor King would only have about the same battle prowess as a 6 Lotus Ancestor if he didn't use his rules. This was also one of the reasons why the foreign realms couldn't conquer the immortal region. Every expert had to face the problem of exhausting the power of laws in their bodies. As long as they couldn't end the battle quickly, they could only retreat. Otherwise, they would lose their lives. However, Ling Han was able to defeat Sin Ping with just the power of his physical body. If this could be popularized, then the other side would have nothing to worry about. Not only would they be able to invade the celestial realm, but they would also be able to take the initiative when invading other realms after the celestial realm was merged with them. All of a sudden, everyone forgot about Ling Han's past arrogance and rebelliousness. This was a priceless treasure. Only the ancestral king shook his head. He completely understood. Ling Han should be the person who had triggered the heavenly tribulation. The reason for this was that he had somehow grasped a trace of the world's power, which was why he had been targeted by the world. Clearly, he had not succeeded, and it was impossible for him to succeed. A mere 8 Lotus cultivator was not qualified to control the power of heaven and earth. In this ancestral king's opinion, Ling Han must have consumed some kind of rare treasure and accidentally activated the power of heaven and earth, thus provoking the heavenly tribulation. His body was tempered by the power of heaven and earth, thus possessing a trace of the power of heaven and earth. The power of the heavens and the earth was the essence of everything. Naturally, it was above the rules, so it wasn't strange for it to be able to rival the rules. Of course, if it were not for the fact that Ling Han's physical strength had long since advanced into the ascending origin tier, it would not have been so miraculous if he had merely been tempered by the void energy. This was a miracle that could not be replicated. The more Sen Ping fought, the more panicked he became. His opponent clearly hadn't used the laws, but he was still able to fight against him without falling into a disadvantageous position. If he was serious, how terrifying would he be? He wasn't the only one who thought this way. Everyone else was thinking the same thing. For example, Huai Jian, Ruined Star, Moon in the Well, and Blood Spear all looked at Ling Han cautiously. This was especially true for Moon in the Well. She had fought Ling Han before. Although she hadn't used any powerful moves, both of them had realized how strong the other was. That was why they were looking forward to the battle on the experts' ranking list. But now, she realized that Ling Han's strength was only the tip of the iceberg. What is the limit of this evil demon clan? After exchanging another 100 moves, Ling Han shook his head and came to his senses. He really couldn't remember how he had done it. It was better to teach those formulas and models to Hun Yo and the others later, and gather everyone's power to think of it together. If they succeeded, their combat strength would increase by leaps and bounds. He could even open up a different and powerful path, avoiding the rules themselves and directly using the power of the heavens and the earth to improve himself. Thinking of this, he punched out. Ping! It hit Sen Ping right in the face. Sen Ping couldn't help but stagger, and after barely walking 2 steps, he sat on the ground. It was as if his spirit had been beaten out of his body, and he was completely unable to command his own body. The referee outside the dominating victory loudly announced the result. Sen Ping was dazed. In the last tournament he lost to Serene Yuan, and in this tournament he lost to Ling Han again. Could it be that 100 Battle Academy was his nemesis? Moreover, Serene Yuan was only slightly stronger than him, and if he worked hard, he could still surpass him. However, Ling Han's strength made it impossible for him to have any extravagant thoughts. Just like Huai Jian, high and mighty, and could only be worshipped. Ling Han fought another battle, and naturally entered the top 32 with the result of 2 complete victories. He had another 5 days to rest. After returning, he immediately gathered all the girls, and told them about his previous experience. This made all the girls very happy. For example, Lu Yutong, Li Xichan, and the others were limited by their talent, and their cultivation speed was extremely slow. Even if they used the ancestral king's blood, they were only slightly faster than ordinary emperor tiers. However, if there was another way to improve, and the end of it was even heavenly venerable tier, then that would naturally be great news. Of course, there was only one mysterious scroll left, and how long it could be used was also a problem. Everyone comprehended it day and night, but those formulas of Wally's were bitter and difficult to understand. Even emperor stars like the Empress and Hun Yo improved slowly, and probably wouldn't be able to make any progress in a short period of time. The Empress and Hun Yo both had a clear goal. They would first attempt to break through to the 11th secret, and then study the matter of virtual energy. Meanwhile, bewitching Maiden Ro also set her sights on the ascending origin tier, determined to become the first among them to reach the ascending origin tier. Similarly, she wasn't bewitched by virtual energy. Ling Han expressed his admiration for the determination of these 3 girls. Cultivators had to have their own determination, and only then could they climb to the peak. In the following 5 days, Ling Han still didn't make any progress, and the elite ranking had already entered the top 16, and it was still a double defeat elimination. With Ling Han's strength, he naturally entered the top 16 without any surprises or mishaps, and in the top 16, only one seed was not retained. This was also because he encountered a strong opponent in the top 32, and both sides were wounded. 5 days wasn't enough to recover at all, and in the battle of the top 16, he was defeated by a strong opponent. Starting from the top 16, it was single defeat elimination, and each person only had one chance. Ling Han's first opponent was the second in the last elite ranking thema. This was a saint beast, a wolf. Its whole body was covered in long silver fur, and one of its tails was in the shape of a dragon, strong and powerful. As it lashed out, even space could be forcibly shattered, forming a stretch of nothingness behind it. He was an elite that had long since become famous. Long before Huai Jian appeared, he had already obtained the first place in the elite ranking, and he clearly had no intention of breaking through to the ascending origin tier, as if he planned to stay on this cultivation level and become the person who had ascended to the top the most times in the history of the elite ranking. Of course, this was just someone else's wild guess. He didn't break through because he felt that his foundation wasn't solid enough, and there was still room for further improvement. He stood in front of Ling Han, his figure ramrod straight, like an angry arrow. "Tyrant, I finally have a chance to spar with you," he said, his voice booming like a clap of thunder. Yet Ling Han felt a bit of pity. This kind of Saint Beast's meat would definitely be delicious and incredibly nourishing, but now that so many people were watching, how could he kill it and store it into the Black Tower? "Niu wants to eat meat," Hu Niu shouted from outside, reminding Ling Han. Ling Han sighed and stared at one of Mo's thighs, saying, "Let's make a deal. How about selling this thigh to me? I promise I won't eat it and will only do research." Mo instantly flew into a rage. "You still say you won't eat it? You fuck you's eyes are almost shining as you stare at me, and your saliva is also almost dripping out of your mouth. Who are you trying to fool? You dare to underestimate me, you've gone too far." He attacked in anger, and an ancient symbol appeared on his wolf head, exuding an astonishing aura that was incredibly terrifying. It said that Mo has received guidance from a heavenly venerable. That's right, the symbol on his forehead came from that heavenly venerable. Tisk, he's received guidance from a heavenly venerable. No wonder he can rank second on the elite ranking. It's still uncertain who will win this battle. The spectators discussed spiritedly. Chapter 23:45. Ling Han was indifferent. In a battle at the same cultivation level, Emperor Stars could no longer arouse his interest. His level had already surpassed Emperor Stars, and he had reached a higher level. The Outlander realm did not have a name for this level, but there were indeed prodigies like Huai Jian, Moon in the Well, Ruin Star, and Blood Spear. In the celestial realm, Ling Han felt that Ji Wuming could barely be considered one. However, from the previous situation he was still a bit lacking. After all, the level of heaven and earth was different. However, if the Empress and Hu Niu could control void energy, they did not need to. As long as they could extract void energy to refine themselves, they would definitely be able to greatly increase their battle prowess and reach 11 on their evolution index. Ling Han casually punched out, and although he did not use his full strength, he easily suppressed Mo. After a few dozen moves, he had the absolute advantage and easily won, advancing into the top 8. As for Mo, he was ranked second in the last expert rankings, so he could only be ranked 9th at most. One day later, the top 8 names were announced. Super Emperor Stars like Huai Jian were among them without any suspense. Right now, the ones with the highest hopes of becoming champions were Ling Han, Huai Jian, Ruin Star, Moon in the Well, and Shueg, the 5 Super Emperor Stars. This was something that had never happened before. So many supreme geniuses had suddenly appeared. However, in the next round of battles, 2 of the Super Emperor Stars would definitely meet, which meant that one of them would be eliminated. Who would it be? The 8 people drew lots again, and in the end, it was Ruin Star and Blood Spear. One of them would be eliminated first. There were still 5 days of rest, and everyone was filled with anticipation. Finally, there would be a battle between the Super Emperor Stars. Although the Super Emperor Stars had met before, that was a group battle, and there was a time limit. However, the expert rankings battles were different. There was no time limit, and there were no restrictions on moves. They could use all kinds of powerful moves without worrying about killing people. With the Ancestor King present, they would be able to stop it in time. Ling Han once again tormented himself to the point of suffocation. When the 6th day arrived, he was muddle-headed, yet he felt a vast and boundless power being absorbed by him. Void energy this time, he immediately reacted. Quang, the heavens and the earth responded, and thunderclouds gathered. Ling Han did not stop immediately. Instead, he engraved this state deeply in his mind before quickly stopping. He allowed Shuzi's energy to circulate a few rounds in his body, improving his physique before disappearing. Having lost its target, the heavenly tribulation also began to dissipate. This time, Ling Han was prepared. He had secluded himself outside the academy. Otherwise, he reckoned that no one would dare to stay in the Four Splendors Academy. It was too dangerous. They could be bombarded by the celestial tribulation at any moment. Who would have such a big heart? He slowly walked back to the academy, recalling in his mind. So that's how it is. He came to a sudden realization. Though there were formulas and models that could be learned and used when extracting void energy, the true process could only be understood and not explained. If it were not for the fact that Ling Han had once been the ruler of this heaven and earth, he would definitely not be able to extract void energy at this cultivation level, even if he had that scroll. The reason he hadn't succeeded before was because he wasn't a proper ruler of the world. He only had the strength of a quasi-empyrean, barely reaching the threshold of the power of the world. The improvement of physical strength is far simpler than regulations. Then, I only need to improve my power to the pinnacle of the ascending origin tier, and it is equivalent to possessing the battle prowess of the consummate ascending origin tier, Ling Han thought. Unfortunately, power was a fixed value. The amount of power corresponded to the amount of battle prowess, unlike cultivation level. Emperor stars, monarch tiers, and the like all had battle prowess that was severely inconsistent with cultivation level. So, Wally uses vitality to measure the strength of a living being, and not cultivation level. As he muttered to himself, he had already returned to the academy, preparing for the battles of the top 4. The first 3 battles were without suspense. Ling Han, Huaijian and Moon in well won smoothly, and the highlight of the 4th battle was currently in full swing. The 2 Super Emperor stars both exploded with astonishing battle prowess, fighting with all their might, not holding back at all. The strength of the 2 was infinitely close, so their battle was naturally incredibly intense. No victor could be determined, causing the battle to drag on like this. Luckily, this kind of situation had happened before, and the organizers naturally had a way to deal with it, which was to accelerate the flow of time. 1 day in the outside world was equivalent to 3 years inside. Su Xing and Shuegu were evenly matched, and they had fought for a full 17 years before a victor was determined. Moreover, this was because they couldn't use weapons. As a member of the insect race, Shuegu had an advantage. The barbs on his body were all super-killing weapons. Normally, they weren't much, but in a battle of equal strength, even the slightest advantage could be infinitely magnified. Naturally, Su Xing was unwilling to accept this. Some of his ultimate skills could only be used with divine weapons, and the 2 of them had agreed to fight again later. No matter what, Shuegu became the last person in the top 4. In the next round, Ling Han would fight Moon in well, and Huaijian would fight Shuegu. There were still 5 days of rest. Ling Han didn't waste a single second. He went to the wilderness and extracted the power of the world from the mysterious scroll. He continuously walked along the edge of the cliff, because if he lost even the slightest bit of control, the heavenly tribulation would really descend. How could he withstand it with his small body? Hiding in the Black Tower indeed, a 9th heaven celestial king couldn't break through the Black Tower, but the targeting of heaven and earth would never disappear. As long as Ling Han dared to come out, heaven and earth would continue to create the bombardment of heavenly tribulation until he faced the tribulation. That was naturally a dead end. There was another choice, and that was Ling Han leaving the foreign realm. However, there was no way back to the celestial realm, and he didn't grasp the corresponding regulations to go to the Xian Ni plane. At present, he could only stay in the foreign realm. Playing with fire, Ling Han's battle prowess increased steadily. His physical strength had already reached the great perfection of the ascending origin tier, and added with his physique that had been tempered by the power of heaven and earth, he could display battle prowess of the great perfection of the ascending origin tier even if he didn't use the power of regulations. Furthermore, this kind of battle prowess wasn't affected by the plane. Even if he went to the Xian Ni plane, or even a higher plane, and though he couldn't use regulations, his battle prowess could still be maintained at the great perfection of the ascending origin tier. No wonder the celestial venerables are so terrifying. They've already escaped the regulations, and their battle prowess won't weaken no matter where they go. 5 days of rest and recuperation passed very quickly, and the semifinals began. 2 battles were going on at the same time. Ling Han faced Moon In-well. This opponent's beauty was unparalleled, and her beauty was fresh and otherworldly. She was like a supreme celestial maiden, and he could only watch her from afar. He didn't even dare or bear to approach her. "I've been looking forward to this day for a long time," Moon In-well said. Her voice was clear and melodious, and it was a kind of supreme enjoyment. Ling Han smiled calmly. "Make your move, I won't go easy on you." Moon In-well was instantly enraged. She was a super emperor star, so when had she ever needed anyone to take pity on her? She was an invincible sword that could destroy everything. 10,000 transformation sword technique. She humphed lightly and pushed out her slender hand. Countless silver swords shot out from her hand and swept towards Ling Han in a frenzy. "I say, sister, can't we have a proper spar?" Ling Han said with a smile. As he advanced aggressively, he swung his fists repeatedly, and every silver sword was directly shattered by him. He was like a demon king, and charged towards Moon In-well. Chapter 2346. In the eyes of the crowd, Ling Han seemed to be taking liberties with Moon In-well. There was no helping it. One was Big Black from the demon race, while the other was Pink Jiao Jiao from the angel race. When the two of them stood together, they were like a beast and a beauty. Now that Ling Han was teasing her, it seemed like he was taking liberties with her. Moon In-well's pretty face was cold, and she kept attacking. One attack after another turned into heaven-piercing sword cheese. She was like a goddess of war, beautiful yet dangerous, charming yet heroic. Even the males from the demon race, the insect race, and the holy beast race could not take their eyes off her. If the outcome of the battle was decided by the spectators, there was no doubt that Moon In-well would be the winner. Ling Han went all out in this battle. His evolution index had already reached 11, and under the current conditions, there was probably no more room for him to improve. However, if he were to exchange blows with a powerhouse like Moon In-well, he might be able to break through the shackles and open up a stronger path to evolution. All sorts of regulations were at his fingertips, turning into the forms of various weapons and slashing at Moon In-well. Some of them were wrapped around his fists and blasted at Moon In-well. His powerful physique also played a great role. He could ignore most of Moon In-well's attacks, which allowed him to free up more energy to focus on his attacks. The result was that Moon In-well's counterattacks were reduced, which made his attacks even more violent. From the looks of it, Ling Han already had the upper hand, and he was basically the only one who could attack. However, both he and Moon In-well knew that the outcome of the battle was far from being decided. This was because although Moon In-well's counterattacks had decreased, the quality had increased. Either he did not attack, or he attacked with the fiercest attacks. Even Ling Han did not dare to underestimate him. However, as the battle continued, Ling Han became more and more proficient. His cultivation had improved too quickly, but the number of battles he had fought was too few. This was not a problem when he was fighting against Thearchs or even Emperor stars. However, Moon In-well was too strong. As long as he revealed the slightest flaw in his attacks, his opponent would be able to seize the opportunity to target him. He would either easily dodge or launch a thunderous counterattack. This forced Ling Han to continuously improve himself, causing him to reveal fewer and fewer flaws, reaching a state of perfection. The stronger he was, the more embarrassed Moon In-well was. The number of times she counterattacked decreased, and she finally revealed a shocked expression. If this went on, she would lose. Lose in a battle between equals? She had never considered the possibility that she would lose. This was something that she had almost no affinity with, but now, it appeared in her mind. She was unwilling to accept this. She was already a super emperor star, so how could she be inferior to Ling Han? It was probably because she couldn't use her weapon. She attributed the reason to this. She had a 9 Lotus grade artifact, which could withstand her battle prowess that exceeded her cultivation level. But now that she was using her fingers as a sword, how could her physique withstand such mighty power? She was sure that her fingers would be blasted into smithereens before she could even make her move. Her defeat was becoming more and more obvious, but she had no intention of losing too badly. She decisively withdrew from the battle and said, "I've lost." Ling Han wasn't done yet. He felt that there was still room for improvement in his combat strength. He couldn't help but say, "Why don't we spar again at my place?" When Moon In Well heard this, she instantly blushed. She scolded him, "Scum," and swiftly left. Spar at his place. No matter how it sounded, these words sounded so ambiguous. The spectators, especially Moon In Well's admirers, were all furious. They wanted nothing more than to rush up and beat this daring guy into mincemeat. He was too shameless, too vulgar, too direct. Ling Han was confused. He was clearly very serious in challenging her to a battle, not asking for a night. So why did he have such a big reaction? Dominating victory. As the referee's voice fell, Ling Han also left the battle platform. As for whether Huai Jian or Shuegu would win, he didn't care at all. In any case, no matter who the opponent was, they couldn't stop him from reaching the top, for the sake of the ancient battle beast's egg. He seized the time to continue tempering himself, but soon discovered that he had reached a bottleneck. His power stopped at the peak stage of ascending origin tier, unable to advance any further. It seemed that his cultivation level still affected the upper limit of his power. He could only come back after breaking through. The victor of the battle between Huai Jian and Shuegu had just been decided, and the prodigies of the new generation ultimately couldn't put on a good show of a counterattack. Huai Jian was slightly stronger and won the battle, but both sides had paid a very heavy price. That ancestral king of the Four Splendors Academy spoke, and announced that the finals would be delayed for a month before starting. There had never been such a precedent in the past, but that ancestral king said that it was for the sake of letting the 2 great emperor stars shine brilliantly, and the reason was also fair and just. But everyone knew that Huai Jian was about to be taken as a disciple by a heavenly venerable, and the reward for the first place in the elite ranking this time was also set up for him, so no matter what, they had to ensure that he reached the top. Otherwise, they would make that heavenly venerable unhappy. Who dared to make a heavenly venerable unhappy? Ling Han, however, didn't mind. He also wanted to battle Huai Jian in his strongest state, and speed up the consolidation of his cultivation level. That way, he could advance to the ascending origin tier as soon as possible. After advancing into the ascending origin tier, under the tempering of the power of heaven and earth, would he be able to compete with celestial kings? There was no need for 8th heaven or 9th heaven, just 1st heaven would be fine. Ling Han thought that he was very modest, but he didn't know that if others knew of his thoughts like this, they would definitely scold him for being delusional. What kind of existence was a celestial king? They were on par with regulations. Even the strongest ascending origin tier emperor star could not possibly surpass the chasm of celestial king. This was absolute, and there were no exceptions. Yet Ling Han didn't think so. The power of heaven and earth was superior to regulations, so it was possible that he would possess battle prowess that could rival celestial kings in the ascending origin tier. Just wait and see. He didn't continue cultivating, but instead began to concoct alchemical pills. He was only a sliver away from the 9th refinement, and he only had to cross over, and he would be able to advance into the level of celestial king tier in a certain aspect. A dozen or so days later, good news arrived. Hunyo and the Empress had both broken through to Mystery 11, and possessed the strongest battle prowess of Immortal Palace tier. However, Bewitching Maiden Rose still couldn't break through. Even if she had an endless supply of ancestral king blood and celestial pills, how could the step of ascending origin tier be easily taken? She had to transform origin power into source power. What was source power? The source power of heaven and earth was closer to the level of regulations, so it was naturally difficult to achieve. Another 7 days passed, and Huai Jian's injuries were completely healed, and he had recovered to peak battle prowess. Thus, that ancestral king gave the order, and the final battle began. This was naturally very unfair, and was extremely biased towards Huai Jian. Why did it matter if he was ready? What if Ling Han was still trying to break through some crucial barrier? It was useless. Behind Huai Jian stood a heavenly venerable, so who could not be partial to him. Thus, the final battle, after being delayed for a dozen or so days, began a few days earlier. Ling Han arrived accompanied by Hu Niu and the other 2 women. Seven Frost, Yuan, and the others were already waiting there. This battle was of great importance. If Ling Han could win, then even if the 100 Battles Academy didn't obtain the title of first in the academy, they would still be able to hold their heads high and be superior to everyone else. Seven Frost and Yuan did not give any encouragement to Ling Han. They knew that he was fighting for their sake this time, and would definitely do his best. In the end, between Ling Han and Huai Jian, who exactly was the strongest Emperor Star? Chapter 2348. Just now, Ling Han seemed to have been affected by the explosion of the divine spear, but in fact, he had used the spatial rules to transfer the power of the explosion to the light area, allowing the spear and shield to kill each other. Huai Jian was astonished. How did Ling Han grasp so many laws? For geniuses like them, their cultivation base improved rapidly. Breaking through the barriers between realms was as easy as drinking water. Hence, they did not have the time to cultivate other laws. Just cultivating a single law was enough. Raising one's realm was the most important thing. Without a realm, even if one had 8 Lotus Imperial Stars, one would still be defeated by a 2-leaf or 3-leaf cultivator. Only after becoming an ancestral monarch would one no longer be able to advance triumphantly no matter how much of a genius one was. That was why one would cultivate other laws. Firstly, it was to comprehend by analogy and obtain inspiration for a breakthrough. Secondly, it was to increase one's own strength. Someone like Ling Han is a complete loafer. Ling Han smiled. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Eat my fist. He punched out. Boom! The space was compressed and stacked layer by layer as he blasted towards Huai Jian. This punch was not just a counterattack. It also pushed the area controlled by Ling Han forward by 1 li. Huai Jian snorted and made a gesture with his right hand. Suddenly, countless rays of light appeared and flew toward the shattered space. Boom! Ling Han's counterattack was blocked this time. The strength of the 2 prodigies was earth-shattering. Everyone was curious. In the beginning, Ling Han had fallen into an absolute disadvantage in terms of the rules, but now he was counterattacking step by step, turning the advantage of the 2 sides to 8-2. Though he was still at a disadvantage, he had turned the tables by who knew how much compared to the previous one-sided situation. More importantly, who knew if Ling Han still had more rules that he had yet to activate. Huai Jian's arms shook, and a divine sword of light appeared in each of his fists. They were completely formed by laws, so no one would dare to use treasured weapons here. His figure charged out, bringing along boundless light as he launched a fierce attack on Ling Han. After a few probings, he realized that it was impossible to defeat Ling Han with long-range attacks. That would give Ling Han enough time to react. Only close combat could pose a real threat to Ling Han. Ling Han let out a long howl and punched out furiously. The 2 heavens' favorites clashed. One was shrouded in light like a god of war, while the other was shrouded in darkness, slaughter, and space. He was like a demon king that was about to wreak havoc in the world. The more rules one grasped, the stronger one's combat strength would be. However, it was not a simple addition. Rather, it was far from this number. For example, if the power of a slaughter law was 1 and the power of a space law was also 1, then the power of 2 laws would be about 1. 2 or 1. 3. This was also why everyone would focus on one type of rule, because it was not good to bite off more than one could chew. Huai Jian, on the other hand, focused on light rules and cultivated this rule to an astonishing level. His entire body was intertwined with light, and his battle prowess was terrifying. He completely suppressed Ling Han, and even the stacking of 3 rules was no match for him. Ling Han was calm. Was this his limit? Of course not. He activated another rule, and boundless lightning spread out. His battle prowess increased by a large margin, and correspondingly, the area of light shrank by about half a kilometer. Now it was 7-3. Everyone exclaimed repeatedly. Ling Han had indeed grasped other rules. 3 rules was actually not his limit. Was 4 rules enough? No matter how many rules you've grasped, in front of me, everything is empty, Huai Jian said proudly. He pressed his hands against the void, and boom! A divine sword of light instantly appeared in the sky and smashed down heavily at Ling Han. Ling Han laughed loudly. He activated his 5th rule. This time, it was the metal-type rule. A cold, sharp aura radiated from his fist. Bang! He punched out, and the divine sword of light instantly shattered. Golden light spread out, and the area of light shrank again, retreating to a range of 6 kilometers. They were about to be evenly matched. Everyone was speechless. Just how many rules had Ling Han grasped? Huai Jian was also speechless. He had only said those words out of anger. Who would have thought that Ling Han had really grasped even more rules? Even he felt that this was troublesome. Although each additional rule that Ling Han used would only make him stronger in terms of rules, and his battle prowess would not increase by much, Huai Jian still had to guard against Ling Han. If Ling Han truly grasped all the rules, then the quantitative change would become a qualitative change, and it would be enough to contend with him. Ling Han used his tyrant fist and began a large-scale counterattack. When he activated his wood-type rule, the area of light only occupied half of the area. At least in terms of the situation, Ling Han was no longer at a disadvantage. And when more rules were activated, the area of light was suppressed instead. In the end, it was only left with an area of 10 meters, the same as Ling Han's. This was truly a 30-year cycle of fortune. Everyone was speechless. Who could believe this scene? Although the outcome of the battle had yet to be decided, at least in terms of momentum, Ling Han already had an absolute advantage. Of course, Huai Jian was definitely not defeated. Just like how Ling Han was at a disadvantage in terms of momentum, he was not afraid of Huai Jian at all. It was the same now. Huai Jian was very surprised. Ling Han had actually grasped the 5 elements: thunder, massacre, darkness, and space. A total of 9 rules. Where did he get so much energy? This thought only flashed through his mind, and he immediately erupted with all his strength, attacking Ling Han. The 2 great geniuses clashed, stacking their ultimate moves, and both bloomed with their own brilliance. Ling Han had some ultimate moves that he had not used, such as the time rules, which could be used to win and reverse life and death. Huai Jian was believed to be the same. This person was a rare genius in this era, and many ancestral kings even thought that he had a high chance of becoming a celestial venerable. Who would believe that such a person did not have a powerful trump card? One sword descends from the heavens, destroys gods and shatters souls. As expected, Huai Jian quickly used his ultimate move. A sword light streaked across the sky, shaking the 9 heavens. This was a terrifying ultimate move. As soon as the sword was unleashed, the light rules became corporeal and appeared in the sky. It even turned into the shape of a rune, increasing the power of the sword light as it slashed towards Ling Han. Moon in Well, Blood Spear, and Ruin Star, the 3 Super Emperor stars, could not help but look shocked. If they went to receive this attack, they would most likely have to pay a great price. Huai Jian was actually this powerful? However, Huai Jian revealed a dissatisfied expression, because this sword was unleashed through his hand, and not the sword that he was born with. Otherwise, its power would have been doubled. It had finally come. The battle intent in Ling Han's heart boiled like fire. He pointed out with a finger, and everything stopped. Time rules. Huai Jian's expression changed. No matter what plane it was, the time rules were the most important and basic rules. Without the time rules, the plane would be completely chaotic. How could there be any martial art experts? Bang bang bang. Ling Han punched out a few more times, and the sword light instantly shattered. The pillars formed from the light rules also shattered, and the runes in the sky lost their support and loudly fell. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 2349. Huai Jian's expression was solemn. Even when facing a prodigy like Shui Ge, he was still confident that he could win. But now, he felt a sense of loss that he had never felt before. He couldn't be sure anymore. This kind of hesitation made him feel terrified. He, the #1 Emperor Star, actually felt terrified? But immediately after, a strong desire to fight rose in his heart. Like flames, it erupted from the top of his head and shot up into the sky. This kind of battle was what he yearned for. Otherwise, he would have already known the outcome of the battle, and it would just be a mere formality. This caused his blood to cool down, and also caused him to be gentle and refined, as if nothing could anger him. A long, long time ago, he wasn't like this. He was filled with passion and fighting spirit. He longed to challenge a strong opponent. Before he could surpass himself, he had buried himself in cultivation. And the moment of victory, the wonderful feeling was indescribable. This was a true battle. This was the original reason why he had embarked on the path of martial art and desired to become stronger. Huai Jian laughed heartily. His aura was majestic, as if he had been reborn from the ashes. His battle prowess had actually increased by a large margin. This was a change in his state of mind. It made him reborn. Actually, he could have advanced to 9 Lotus long ago. However, firstly, he had to fight this battle for the Academy. Secondly, he always felt that his condition wasn't perfect. Now that his state of mind was tense and relaxed, he knew where the last bit of inadequacy was. Under the repair, his battle prowess was naturally perfect. Such a Huai Jian was too terrifying. Every move he made was filled with sword qi. Even when he opened and closed his eyes, a pair of treasured swords would fall out, slashing the heavens and the earth. Ling Han was shocked. He didn't expect such a shocking change to happen to Huai Jian. But after the shock, he was filled with fighting spirit. An opponent like this was too rare. He let out a long roar and fully unleashed his battle prowess. All sorts of rules were at his fingertips, extremely mysterious. This wasn't just piling up rules. When an attack came, he used the defensive-oriented rule of Earth to counter it. When attacking, the metal rule and the slaughter rule would link together. In terms of movement techniques, the space rule was, of course, unique. In terms of using rules, Ling Han was already close to perfection. Under the pressure of a strong enemy like Huai Jian, Ling Han was speeding up towards perfection. The spectators were all dazzled by this sight, and they even felt an urge to clasp their heads and exclaim in shock. Regardless of whether it was Huai Jian or Ling Han, such prodigies should both be unique, yet now two had appeared. Was it a love-hate relationship, and only one of them could advance to the heavenly venerable tier, or was it a mutual encouragement, and both of them would become heavenly venerable tiers? On the battlefield, the two of them had forgotten about it for a moment and were focused on fighting with all their might. At this time, glory, rewards, and even victory were all forgotten. There was only one word in their minds: fight. They fought until their muscles were exhausted and their bones were shattered. The two geniuses were incredibly resplendent and released their own light, causing others to pale in comparison. Only Ji Shuegu and the other 2 Super Emperor stars were filled with battle intent, vowing to surpass the two of them. Everyone else was mediocre, and even the Emperor stars felt a sense of helplessness. Fight, 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 fight to the last bit of strength. Ling Han and Huai Jian were evenly matched. Even with the acceleration of time, 10 days had passed in the outside world, but they were still fighting fiercely. This was a 1,000-fold acceleration of time. 10 days in the outside world was more than 20 years inside. The two geniuses fought fiercely at the beginning, but now their speed was getting slower and slower, and they would only make a single move after a long time. This was not because they were exhausted, but because they had used up all their techniques. Now, they were fighting while thinking of new techniques. This was a test of their imagination, creativity, and adaptability. Whoever's imagination, creativity, and adaptability could not keep up, the battle would be decided in an instant. At this time, the people outside actually did not care much about who would win between Ling Han and Huai Jian. They had already proven their strength and were fully deserving of being the twin prodigies of the Outlander realm. They could shine brightly for an era. Perhaps in another few billion years, the two of them would each go to a battlefield and lead a group of heroes. One would conquer the immortal domain, while the other would carry the banner against the Xian Ni plane. After more than 20 years of intense battle, the two great prodigies were riddled with wounds. Though they had mastered recovery techniques with astonishing effects, because the battle was too fierce, their recovery speed was far from being able to keep up. At this time, Ling Han's powerful physique had a huge advantage. The injuries he had sustained were slightly lighter, and the speed of his recovery was slightly faster. Although it was only a little, as they continued to accumulate, it became an advantage, and it slowly became a victory. On the 13th day, Huai Jian's body swayed after a head-on clash with Ling Han. He sat on the ground, no longer able to continue fighting. His injuries were too severe. A murderous intent rose in Ling Han's heart. Huai Jian was too terrifying, and he might really become a celestial sovereign in the future. This was definitely not good news for the immortal domain. He had an urge to kill his opponent, but they had fought for so long, and he appreciated each other. Secondly, there was the ancestral king here, so it was not good for him to do so. Thinking of this, his murderous intent slowly dissipated. "Victory," the ancestral king said, his voice calm and without the slightest fluctuation. It was practically impossible to pry into the ancestral king's emotions. The seal on the battlefield opened. Before Ling Han walked out, he saw dark clouds rolling in the sky, and terrifying lightning appeared. Heavenly tribulation. He looked towards Huai Jian in surprise. This guy had broken through after this battle. He was really audacious. This person's battle prowess was actually not inferior to his, but his physique was inferior, so he made a mistake in the end. Of course, Ling Han did not use his physical strength. This was at the peak stage of the ascending origin tier, and was a level stronger than his power of regulation. Now that Huai Jian was riddled with wounds, he actually dared to break through. This was not audacious, what was? But if he could still survive under such circumstances, it would be a huge boost to Huai Jian's confidence, or even a rebirth of his mental state. As expected of Huai Jian, Ling Han shook his head. After leaving the battle area, the first thing he did was to head straight for the ancient battle beast egg. It was now his. "Tyrant, I want to battle with you again." Moon Inwell walked over gracefully. There was already a treasured sword in her hand. It was like colored glass, exuding a chilling aura. With a sword in hand, she was in her strongest state. "I also want to battle with you," Shui Gu said solemnly. He had transformed into a bald man, and his skin was blood red and extremely smooth, guaranteed to not have a single pore. Su Xing also stood at the side. He did not speak, but the fighting spirit in his eyes explained everything. Ling Han put away the battle beast egg, and then cast a vigilant look at the three. "You want to steal my battle beast egg?" Moon Inwell and the other two had the urge to beat up Ling Han. Did they have to go so far? 3 days later, Sunset Mountains. Moon Inwell left these words and then swaggered off. Schweg and Su Xing were beaten by Moon Inwell, so they could only rub their noses and did not issue a challenge. It was hard to say who would win between Ling Han and Moon Inwell, and even if Ling Han won, he might be seriously injured, so it would be an unfair victory. They wanted to win against Ling Han in his strongest state. Ling Han returned to Hun Yo and the other two girls' side. Immediately, Qi Shuang and Yuan looked extremely excited, while Sun Feng and the others' faces were dark. They naturally did not want to see Ling Han so glorious. "Nyo wants to eat the egg." Hun Yo stared at Ling Han, saliva already flowing. Chapter 2350. Hearing Hun Yo say that, Seven Frost and Yuan were both shocked and hurriedly stopped her, afraid that Ling Han would get hot-headed and roast the battle beast egg and eat it. Once it hatched, it would definitely become ancestral king level, which was equivalent to an ancestral tool with its own consciousness. How precious! Ling Han couldn't help but smile. Even if Seven Frost and Yuan didn't stop him, he wouldn't take out the battle beast egg for Hun Yo to eat. "Be good, this egg doesn't taste good." After some persuasion, Hunyo reluctantly gave up on the idea of eating the egg. They returned, made some preparations, and were about to return. Ling Han, on the other hand, asked for leave from Seven Frost and Yuan with the excuse of traveling the world. This put the two of them in a very difficult position. Ling Han obtaining the first place in the elite ranking was a great honor for the 100 Battle Academy, and when they returned, they naturally had to hold a special celebration. The two of them had led the academy well, so naturally, it would also affect their faces, and they would receive great honor. However, if Ling Han didn't return, the effect would be greatly reduced. They tried everything to persuade him, but Ling Han made up his mind. His strength was there anyway. Even if Seven Frost and Yuan used violence, he could easily break through. Ling Han didn't hatch the battle beast egg, but first went into seclusion and meditated, completely digesting what he learned from the battle with Huai Jian. 3 days later, he went to the Sunset Mountains for the appointment. Moon in the Well was already waiting there. One person, one sword, magnificent. The nearby mountains were also filled with people. Some didn't even have a place to stand and could only fly in the air. "You're late," Moon in the Well said discontentedly when Ling Han arrived. "I'm too popular now, and too many people greeted me on the way. I'd be embarrassed if I didn't reply. I was afraid people would say I'm famous and arrogant, so I'm late," Ling Han said with a smile. Moon in the Well's pretty face darkened. This guy really talked nonsense. She clearly knew that Ling Han didn't greet anyone on the way here. He was obviously messing with her. She snorted, shook her sword and said, "My sword is a 9 Lotus level treasure. You can also use weapons, lest people say I'm bullying you." Ling Han nodded, and he unhesitatingly drew out the divine demon sword. He gave it a light shake, and the blade of the sword instantly released a long cry. It was as if an invincible king tier was issuing a warning. Suddenly, the glazed sword in Jingzhong Suki's hand twisted like a snake, as if it had encountered a terrifying demon and was trembling in fear. Moon in the Well was greatly alarmed. This was her precious artifact, and it was connected to her mind. She could feel that the sword in her hand was afraid, and the object of its fear was precisely the sword in Ling Han's hand. "Fuck, the fight hasn't even started and you're already scared?" Moon in the Well was both angry and shocked. She hurriedly shook her sword, wanting to fight. Pa! A crack actually appeared in the middle of the sword in her hand, and then it rapidly expanded, and then it broke into two. This Moon in Jingzhong was completely speechless. Because of her fear of the sword in Ling Han's hand, her glass sword had shattered itself. They would rather shatter themselves than fight. What kind of suppression was this? An ancestral artifact. She said with difficulty. Only an ancestral artifact could suppress a 9 Lotus bejeweled treasure. She did not even have the right to fight it. What the hell was this fight about? Unarmed, she was no match for Ling Han in the first place. At first, she had wanted to use her precious artifact to turn the tables, but the result was even worse. She had already been defeated before the fight had even started. This guy was too lucky, wasn't he? He actually had an ancestral artifact. Ling Han shook his sword lightly, smiled and asked, "Do you still want to fight?" Moon in the Well was speechless. She turned around, flapped her wings, and left. Unless she could obtain an ancestral artifact, she could not stand against Ling Han at all. The problem was, how precious was an ancestral artifact? Putting aside obtaining it, who would lend it to her? She'd better wait until she became an ancestral king tier. Otherwise, she would always be suppressed by Ling Han's ancestral artifact, and would not be able to turn the tables at all. Everyone on the mountain was speechless. Who would have thought that the intense battle that they were anticipating would actually end in such a manner? Ling Han put away the divine demon sword, and slowly left. When he returned to his residence, Ling Han decided to first bind the battle beast egg with his blood, and then let it slowly hatch. Meanwhile, he would continue to wander around in the foreign realm. When he had accumulated enough experience, he would break through to the ascending origin tier. Inside the Black Tower, he held the battle beast egg in his left hand, and used his teeth to bite the index finger of his right hand. Instantly, blood dripped down, and sprinkled onto the battle beast egg. He chanted in his mind as he dipped his finger in the blood, and began to draw on the egg. This was a talisman that could help him connect with this beast egg and form a master-servant ritual with the life within it. When the talisman was drawn, there was suddenly a frighteningly ferocious might that charged towards Ling Han, as if an incredibly frightening ferocious beast was opening its giant mouth at him. Ling Han discovered that he was in a dark space. He couldn't see the sky, nor could he see the ground. There was only a stretch of nothingness, but very soon, a colossal creature appeared in front of him. It was in the form of a ferocious beast, but only stood on its 2 legs. These 2 hind legs were long and strong, and took up more than half of its body, but its 2 front legs were pitifully small, shrinking at the position of its chest. However, its mouth was really huge, and the 2 rows of teeth that were revealed were as if they were forged from blades, exuding a sinister light. What kind of monster was this? Ling Han could only say that he knew too little about the species of the foreign realm, but there was one thing that he was sure of, and that was that this beast was not simple. Pa. The monster moved its legs, and like a human, it sprinted towards Ling Han. It opened its mouth, and boom, a frightening sound wave exploded out, charging towards Ling Han. Ling Han instantly understood. The present him was only a spiritual body, and the monster in front of him was also a battle beast that had not yet hatched. As expected of an existence that was destined to become an ancestral king. It was extremely fierce, and even before it was born, it already had a peerless ferocious might. It was not willing to be enslaved by Ling Han, so it started a fierce battle with Ling Han in this spiritual world. If it could seriously injure Ling Han, it could turn the tables and Ling Han would be the servant, and it would be the master. This kind of master-slave contract was originally a 2-way street, and the strong were respected. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly. This battle beast was indeed destined to become an ancestral king, but he was someone who was destined to become a sky sovereign. He met it fearlessly, and endless ferocious flames burned all over his body. When it came to killing, who was he afraid of? The man and the beast collided with each other, and then both of them bounced off. This was a confrontation on the spiritual level, and had nothing to do with physique. The battle beast was born for battle, and it was crazy for battle. Although it had not yet been born, its ferocious might was already monstrous. It immediately ran back on its 2 large legs, and opened its mouth, biting towards Ling Han's neck. Ling Han's physique was astonishing, and his soul was not much inferior. Similarly, with a long roar, he rolled back, and his attacks were like rain. Peng, peng, peng. 1 man and 1 beast fought fiercely. The battle beast was incomparably ferocious, and it opened its mouth to bite randomly. Although its claws were small, their destructive power was extremely shocking, and a single touch could seriously injure Ling Han. This was a spiritual body, and there would not be any obvious injuries, but it would make them weak. Whoever was weak to the extreme first would reveal the core of their soul, and the seed of enslavement would be easily planted. Of course, Ling Han was not inferior. He punched out furiously, and the battle beast howled again, and its figure rapidly faded away. He had victory in his hands. Chapter 2352. Ling Han tested the little beast's defenses again, and was stunned again. The little guy's defenses were astonishingly thick, enough to rival the level of pseudo-7-star pseudo-divine metal, on the same level as its destructive power. No wonder this little guy was called a battle beast. It combined terrifying destructive power and defensive power, and was born for slaughter and destruction. He couldn't help but think that the Xian Ni plane had battle soldiers, and the other world had battle beasts. Could this be a species born in the other world to protect itself? Because it was born at the ascending origin tier, this was too shocking, and did not conform to the laws of heaven and earth. Powerful strength should be obtained through bitter cultivation, and not born with it, reaping it without effort. Thus, if the battle beasts were born in the other world to protect itself, and fought against battle soldiers, this was actually a very reasonable guess. He exited the Black Tower, planning to ask Wally. Wow, what a cute dog. When it came to Little Terror, all the women's eyes lit up, all of them looking like they wanted to pounce on it. Ling Han couldn't help but sweat profusely. These women just couldn't stand cute things, especially since they couldn't give birth themselves, so they had even less resistance towards cute things. Moreover, does it look like a dog? What kind of look do you all have? It looks delicious. Hunyo, meanwhile, propped up her chin, staring at the little beast, her saliva already brewing. Only she was different. Feeling Hunyo's hostility, Little Terror immediately walked towards her, bared his mouth, and revealed 2 rows of snow-white teeth. When it matured, it was very fierce, those 2 rows of teeth like sharp knives, causing people to feel a chill in their hearts. But now, it couldn't be fierce at all, and instead made people feel that it was extremely cute, adorable to the extreme. It was like an angry puppy that had just been born. Who would be afraid? Ling Han couldn't help but smile and said, "Nyo, you have to take it easy, this little guy is very fierce." Hunyo was naturally unafraid and humphed and said, "A little guy, Nyo thinks it's not enough to fill my stomach." Little Terror released a roar, roaring at Hunyo. It was only a childish voice, and didn't have any deterrence at all. All the women couldn't help but laugh, feeling that this little guy was incredibly fun. "Come, let big sister hug you." Bewitching Maiden Rose stretched out her hand. Xiao Ku was furious. It was not a pet, but a beast. It was born to fight, so acting cute had nothing to do with it. It howled again, but this time, it was not because it was angry. Rather, it was because Ling Han's finger was scratching its neck, and it was so comfortable that it couldn't have asked for more. The little guy looked at Ling Han resentfully. He was a majestic battle beast, not a pet. He didn't expect that the girls would also rush over and touch him. This made the little guy so comfortable that his tail straightened up, and his eyes became even cuter. "He's a beast, a beast, a beast, you bastard." The little guy's belly was facing the sky, and he was completely defenseless, allowing the girls to ravage him. Of course, this was also because it knew that these were its mistresses, so it didn't dare to resist. Otherwise, if anyone dared to bully it like this, the little guy would have already exploded. "Terror and Battle Beast, Ling asked. Ling Han asked. "Battle Beast has," Ling Chen said. Battle Beast should be a biological battle beast created by this plane to fight against this plane. They have high defense and destructive power, and are meant to destroy the battle beasts of this plane. Wally searched his memory and said, "War beasts should be biological soldiers created by this plane to fight against this plane. They have the characteristics of high defense and high destructive power, and were created to destroy the soldiers of this plane." Ling Han was curious and said, "Battle Beast should be a biological battle beast created by this plane to fight against this plane. It has high defense and destructive power, and is meant to destroy the battle beasts of this plane. However, heaven and earth can't interfere too much. Moreover, battle beast reproduction is extremely difficult, so they disappeared long ago. It can be considered a failed attempt by heaven and earth. If they're of the same level, they're obviously battle beasts," Wally said immediately. "However, battle beasts can't compare to battle beasts. If one battle beast can't defeat it, 10, 20, or even 100 can attack together." Ling Han nodded. Why did battle beasts go extinct? Now, they could only be found in ancient tombs. It was because this was an undesirable attempt that they were eliminated by heaven and earth. They didn't want to waste energy on this anymore. However, although battle beasts were eliminated, it didn't mean that these creatures weren't strong. It was just that their numbers were too small, and they couldn't form a large scale. "You actually have a beast?" Wally was a little surprised. Although on his dead face, the expression of surprise was only a slight opening of his mouth, it was already very good that he was surprised. "You don't have to admire me. I know I'm very powerful." Ling Han smiled. War looked at Little Terror. Buzz, his eyes glowed with green light, and he scanned Little Terror up and down. Roar! Sensing this green light, Little Terror immediately turned around and stood up. He stared at War, and a terrifying, ferocious aura burst out. He didn't know War, but the light he was emitting made him feel uncomfortable and even angry. Once he revealed his ferocious aura, all the girls were shocked. Only now did they know that Little Terror had such a domineering side. "It's a battle beast after all." Ling Han purposely stepped back and didn't stop Little Terror from attacking. He was very curious about War's strength. He could even absorb the void energy, one of the fundamental powers of the origin world. What kind of pervert was this? War didn't react and continued to scan Little Terror. Little Terror was completely enraged. Since Ling Han didn't stop him, his ferocious side as a battle beast immediately erupted. Tung ting tang, he moved his two hind legs. They were strong and powerful. Other people's legs were small, but their explosive power was shocking. Xiao, he instantly rushed in front of War and swept his claws. War retreated. His legs didn't move, and his whole body just retreated in the air. It was very strange. However, this kind of dodging was very efficient. No matter how Little Terror attacked, he could always dodge in time. Ling Han's eyes lit up. War should be using spatial laws, but it wasn't laws at the same time. It was very strange. This was the power of heaven and earth above laws. Laws were the materialization of the power of heaven and earth. In fact, they were also considered the power of heaven and earth. However, when warriors fought, they needed to first use laws, and then convert them into attack power or speed. This was a conversion process. No matter how fast it was, it still needed time. Thus, War had a chance to dodge. Of course, apart from War, the others also needed to use laws to dodge. This was also a conversion process, so there was no advantage to speak of. Ling Han considered. In fact, he could also use a little bit of the power of heaven and earth. That was because his body had been tempered by the void energy, and he could directly use his own power. He didn't need to first activate laws, and then convert them into attack power or speed. Theoretically, though my power is only at the peak stage of the ascending origin tier, my battle prowess should be more than this. If I can fully develop my advantage. He muttered in his heart. He muttered in his heart. As expected, it was a smart move to let Little Terror fight Wally. War soon stopped scanning with the green light. As he calmly dodged Little Terror's attacks, he said to Ling Han, "This battle beast genes are very strong. It's worth nurturing." Though battle beasts could definitely become celestial kings were still divided into 9 heavens. Chapter 2353. When it came to analysis, Ling Han was only impressed by Wall. Since he said that Little Terror was worth nurturing, then it was definitely worth nurturing. Ling Han couldn't help but rub his chin. Could he find a female for such a powerful battle beast and have her give birth to a bunch of cubs to form a battle beast army? However, Little Terror had just been born. It wouldn't be right to have any ideas about it now. Forget it, I'll wait for it to grow a little bigger. Little Terror seemed to sense Ling Han's gaze and couldn't help but shiver. It moved towards Ling Han, its eyes filled with resentment. Ling Han laughed heartily. With a thought, Little Terror immediately stopped attacking. He picked Little Terror up and took out a large number of elixirs and immortal medicines. "Come, Little Terror. Eat more and grow up faster." His eyes glowed. He had already decided to use Little Terror as a breeding pig. Wait, is Little Terror male or female? He couldn't help but move towards the space between Little Terror's legs. Little Terror couldn't help but shiver and clamp its legs together tightly. "Even if you're my master, you can't pry into my privacy." Little Terror won't be wary. In the future, it won't be willing to mate with me. Little Terror, that's a joyous thing. Why are you so emotional? That's right, it's still too young. It'll change in the future. Tyrant. At this moment, a voice came from outside the door. Ling Han couldn't help but be slightly surprised when he heard it. He pushed the door open and saw a charming young man from the Angel clan standing at the door. He was incomparably handsome and had a breathtaking aura that made people want to worship him. "Huai Jian." Ling Han nodded and said, "You didn't suffer any side effects, did you?" Huai Jian had broken through to the 9 Lotus realm while heavily injured. If he was unlucky, he could have suffered a serious Dao injury. That would be a big problem. Huai Jian smiled. "I'm indeed injured, but I see it as a form of training. Once I erase this Dao injury, my battle strength will increase by another level." Ling Han's eyes narrowed. "Actually, you can completely get rid of your internal injuries, right?" Huai Jian was stunned for a moment before he said, "You guessed right. That is indeed the case." This guy was really crazy. He actually dared to deliberately leave an internal injury in his body when he was breaking through to train himself. Ling Han thought to himself that he wouldn't dare to play like this. It was completely provoking him. However, it had to be said that if Huai Jian could really use his great willpower to cut off the Dao injury, then his combat power would indeed rise to a terrifying level. If he wanted to surpass Ling Han, he had to use an unconventional method, because they had already reached the limit of conventional methods, or even surpassed it long ago. If he wanted to improve beyond the limit, he could only use extraordinary methods. There wasn't much difference between a genius and a lunatic. Ling Han smiled and said, "Do you want to fight me again?" His battle intent was very strong. Exchanging pointers with an expert like Huai Jian would be very beneficial to him. Huai Jian shook his head. "I'm already at 9 lotuses. You're only at 8 lotuses. If I were to fight you, it would be an unfair fight. When you reach the 9 lotus stage, we'll fight again." Alright. Ling Han didn't force the issue. Emperor stars were naturally proud, let alone Huai Jian. "I came to you this time to ask if you're interested in becoming a disciple of Lord Eternal Desolation with me," Huai Jian said solemnly. "Lord Eternal Desolation?" Ling Han was slightly surprised. "Who is this?" Huai Jian was also surprised. "Don't you know who Lord Eternal Desolation is?" Ling Han scratched his head. "I really don't know." Huai Jian shook his head. "Lord Eternal Desolation is a heavenly venerable." "Oh, so it was a heavenly venerable from the foreign realm." Ling Han chuckled. "How could a heavenly venerable accept me as a disciple?" Huai Jian shook his head. "You're too humble. Your aptitude already surpasses most heavenly venerable descendants. If the heavens still don't respect you, then I wouldn't have the face to introduce you to them." There weren't many descendants of heavenly venerables, but because of their powerful bloodlines, it was extremely easy for them to produce emperor stars and reach the level of 18 lotus ancestral kings. However, it was impossible for them to cross the threshold of a heavenly venerable. At least, there hadn't been a legend of 2 heavenly venerables in the foreign realm. However, there were also differences in strength between emperor stars. For example, during the battle between the foreign realm and the immortal realm, Ji Wuming could almost stand against Qi Shui, and that was even when he was a small realm lower. Qi Shui was an emperor star, and he was also a descendant of heavenly venerable Qi Yan. But so what? If they fought at the same level, Ji Wuming would definitely win. Ling Han immediately started thinking about whether he should agree or not. He actually wanted to come into contact with a heavenly venerable. Since he also wanted to step into that level, it would be easier for him to understand the path ahead if he came into contact with one in advance. But the problem was, what kind of eyesight did a heavenly venerable have? Could his heaven-deceiving technique fool them? Wait, wasn't there still Wally? Ling Han muttered, "Let me think about it. How about I give you an answer tomorrow?" Huai Jian was indescribably shocked. "Fuck, I'm sending you to become a disciple of a heavenly venerable, not sending you to the battlefield. No matter how many emperor stars you begged for, you still want to think about it. Even if you want to think about it, it should be heavenly venerable Heng Huang who thinks about it." If it wasn't for the fact that he really admired Ling Han and had a strong desire to defeat this opponent in the future, he would definitely have turned around and left by now. "Alright," he agreed. After Huai Jian left, Ling Han immediately called Wali over and started asking him questions. "You want to deceive an existence with a vitality index of more than 15,000? Wali's eyes flickered, as if he was making some calculations. After a while, he said, "No, you can't do it." Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. His hopes of coming into close contact with a heavenly venerable were going to be dashed. "However, if I help you improve it a little, you should be able to do it." Unexpectedly, Wali made another big turn. Ling Han couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Could it be that Wali had also been infected by him and knew how to joke? "Teach me," he said. Wali didn't teach him immediately. Instead, he asked him to teach him the heaven-deceiving technique. He would use it to improve it. Ling Han used time acceleration on him, and after a long while, Wally opened his eyes. Done. He nodded. His eyes shone as he taught the improved heaven-deceiving technique in the form of formulas and models. He said, "This will be of some help to me as well. It will allow me to conceal myself better, so I won't charge you." Right? This guy hadn't changed at all. Ling Han looked at these formulas and models, feeling a bit of a headache. However, Wally would only present cultivation techniques in such a way. In his eyes, the world was like this. It was a gigantic model, and this gigantic model could be broken down into innumerable formulas. Everything had a logical basis. Ling Han didn't care about it for now. Not only did he memorize these formulas and models, even the women were no exception. It was mainly the Empress, Hu Niu, and bewitching Maiden Ro. As for the other women, because their cultivation level was too weak, there wasn't much meaning in learning the heaven-deceiving technique. It wouldn't be able to deceive anyone, so it was better for them to obediently stay in the Black Tower. A day passed, and when Huai Jian came again, Ling Han nodded decisively. "All right, let's go together." Huai Jian couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He wasn't begging Ling Han. Being the disciple of a heavenly venerable, would you feel wronged? Chapter 2354. This was because Ling Han had said that he wanted to go to Heavenly Lord Eternal Wilderness with Huai Jian. Naturally, Yuan and Seven Frost had no right to say no. They could only send Ling Han off with envious gazes. But what made them depressed was that even the Empress, Hu Niu, and bewitching Maiden Ro had fled with them. They had 2 Emperor stars and could bring glory to 100 War Academy in the future. But would they dare to fight with the Heavenly Venerables? Ling Han and the rest set off. Huai Jian naturally knew the way and led the way. They used the teleportation circle to hurry on with their journey. Wally still turned into a pendant and hung on the corner of Ling Han's clothes. He had also used the heaven-deceiving spell, and his hiding ability had increased by a large margin. After almost 7 years, they finally arrived at this place. This was an incomparably majestic mountain. It was so tall that one could look up at it with their heads held high. Brilliant lights shrouded the mountain, and it exuded a boundless majestic aura. Anyone who saw it would want to worship it. It was as if an Empyrean was sitting there cross-legged. This was called Mount Tianhuang, and it was also Heavenly Venerable Eternal Desolation's dojo. Empyreans all had different personalities. Some Empyreans were incomparably low-key, and it wasn't impossible for the world to not know of their existence. There were also Empyreans that were extremely high-profile, their reputations that shook the world. Not only was this Heavenly Lord Eternal Desolation high-profile, but he was also very fond of accepting disciples. He had more than 30 disciples under his wing. However, it was as if there was a curse that a Heavenly Lord could not produce a Heavenly Lord. Throughout history, every Empyrean had relied on themselves to walk the path of the strongest. And the highest achievements of an Empyrean as a disciple were limited to the 18 Lotus Ancestor Kings. They were only incomparably powerful, approaching the height of a quasi-Empyrean. Of course, geniuses would never admit defeat. For example, Huai Jian. His goal was definitely to become a Heavenly Venerable, but why did he still want to be a disciple of Heavenly Venerable Heng Huang? Because he was confident he could break the spell. In fact, every Emperor Star had this kind of confidence, but in the end, no one could break this curse. It only made this curse even heavier. Of course, Ling Han didn't believe it either. Otherwise, why would he come here? This could only mean one thing. Becoming an Empyrean was just too difficult. When they went up the mountain, Ling Han and the rest had already mastered the improved version of the heaven-deceiving technique. According to Wally, even a celestial venerable would not be able to see through it. Xiao Luo, on the other hand, did not grow taller even after so many years. She was still a silly and adorable existence. However, its battle prowess had increased by quite a bit. Now, it could tear apart 7-star pseudo-immortal metal like it was playing around. It could also just barely leave a mark on 8-star pseudo-immortal metal. As soon as they entered the mountain region, they lost their sense of direction. They only felt that there was white fog everywhere, and they couldn't even see their own fingers. Not only their eyes, but even their divine sense and hearing were also blocked. Huai Jian took out a small pendant, but as soon as it was taken out, it dispersed the dense fog. It could be seen clearly within a radius of at least 100 feet. This is a keepsake bestowed by Lord Eternal Desolation, he explained to Ling Han and the others. They were just about to set off, yet they all stopped. Little Terror, who was held in bewitching Maiden Rose's arms, even bared his teeth, showing his ferocity. I am Huai Jian. I have come to pay my respects on the orders of Lord Heng Huang. Huai Jian cupped his fists towards the front. So you are Huai Jian? A voice traveled over from the front, but it couldn't reach him. The other party was 100 feet away. Though Master has the intention of taking you as a disciple, why have you brought a bunch of irrelevant people here? That person asked again, his tone aggressive. Huai Jian said, this person's name is Ba, and he is the number 1 on the elite ranking of the 1000 Academy battle this time. His talent in martial art is astonishing. I know that Lord Eternal Desolation loves to nurture the best of the younger generation, so I have specially brought him here for Lord Eternal Desolation to take a look. Number 1 on the elite ranking? The person opposite him sneered. There are no heirs of us celestial venerables participating in this battle. This is just child's play, and you actually have the face to say this? He paused and then said, Huai Jian, don't think that you can forget everything just because Lord Master has hit you. You should know that you are only one of the 37 disciples that Master has taken. Moreover, you aren't one right now. Huai Jian couldn't help but look angry and said, whether Lord Eternal Desolation is willing to take Ba as a disciple is naturally up to him to decide. Is there a need for you to decide? How dare you? The person opposite him finally showed himself. This was a young man from the demon race. He had 4 horns on his head, and they each occupied a position in the east, west, south, and north directions. He was over a foot tall, and was very interesting. Hunyo couldn't help but stare at his horns, clicking her tongue in wonder as she did so. The demon race was displeased by her stare, and couldn't help but shout, what are you? You're in trouble. Hunyo blurted out. Killing intent instantly appeared on the demon race's face. His right hand shook, and a battle spear appeared in his hand. It was as long as 6 meters. He held the spear in his hand, and without another word, he stabbed it towards Hunyo. This spear was fast, accurate, and ruthless. It carried a terrifying killing intent and might, and was enough to kill an ordinary 9 Lotus Elite. This was because he was a 1-leaf 9 Lotus Emperor Star, and had the battle prowess of a 2-leaf 9 Lotus Emperor Star. Hunyo hadn't moved yet, and Little Terror let out a roar first. He leaped out from bewitching Maiden Rose's arms, and bit towards the spear. This was his mistress, and someone attacked him. As a loyal dog that protected the family, he naturally had to be the first to charge out. Speaking of which, this mistress kept drooling as she stared at his legs. In truth, he didn't really want to charge out, but who asked him to be so loyal? With a whoosh, Little Terror bit down on the spear, and refused to let go. The demon race opposite him couldn't help but gape in shock. He was an Emperor Star, a 1-leaf 9 Lotus Emperor Star. Apart from the ancestral king, only those with battle prowess on the level of 3 leaves could suppress him. But how could a newborn beast cub not be such an existence? However, when his spear landed in this incredibly adorable little beast's mouth, it was as if it had taken root and didn't move in the slightest. No matter how hard he pulled, it was useless. Hiss, this little beast's strength was too terrifying, wasn't it? Little Terror unleashed its might, and with a leap, the spear was instantly snapped in half by its teeth. The demon race retreated a few steps, his expression filled with shock. One had to realize that this spear was made of 7-star pseudo-divine metal, and was almost as strong as his full-strength defense. Yet, it had still been snapped in half by Little Terror's teeth. How unimaginable was this? Little Terror didn't back down, and once again pounced out, launching a fierce attack at the demon race. The demon race hurriedly parried, but fearing the sharpness of Little Terror's teeth, he actually didn't dare to take them head-on, and could only retreat as he fought. Huai Jian couldn't help but be shocked. That demon race was the same as him, also a 1-leaf 9 Lotus Emperor Star. Although he was a Super Emperor Star, And the demon race might not be. The demon race had cultivated for much longer than he had at the level of 9 Lotus. Thus, their battle prowess was actually about the same. In other words, if it were him, perhaps the result would be the same. So this is that battle beast egg? Even though Huai Jian had always believed in his own strength, he couldn't help but feel a trace of envy. This egg had been prepared for him, but it had now become Ling Han's battle pet. This thought only flashed in his mind for a moment, and he was once again filled with confidence. As long as he could heal the Dao injuries in his body, his battle prowess would greatly increase, and he would definitely be able to suppress Ling Han. Chapter 2356. What level of cultivation did Feng Hailan have? What was Feng Hailan's level of cultivation? He was a 1-leaf Emperor Star, while Ling Han was an 8 Lotus 11-leaf Emperor Star. Even if he was also an Emperor Star, he was still an entire realm away from Feng Hailan. Even if he was an 11-leaf Emperor Star, Feng Hailan still had the advantage of an entire realm. Which Emperor Star could defeat another Emperor Star by an entire realm, especially someone at 9 Lotus's level? Wasn't this clearly robbery? Huai Jian was stunned. You're an Emperor Star too? How dare you be so brazen and shameless? Senior brother Feng, this is Tyrant. I've specially introduced him to Lord Eternal Desolation. His expression darkened. Feng Hailan smiled faintly. If the battle beast had been in Huai Jian's hands, he definitely wouldn't have dared to rob it. This was Celestial Sovereign Eternal Desolation's arrangement. Who would dare go against a Celestial Sovereign's will? But Ling Han was different. Even if he really did become Celestial Sovereign Eternal Desolation's disciple, that was a matter for the future. Celestial Sovereign Eternal Desolation had a free-range attitude towards his disciples. If you were strong, you could win what you wanted. Ling Han had stolen this battle beast from Huai Jian, so he could naturally take it as well. In the future, if Ling Han had the ability, he could take it back. Of course, he would definitely continue to suppress Ling Han, not giving him a chance to surpass him. Junior brother Huai Jian, you still don't know our Eternal Desolation's rules. I don't blame you, but don't interfere in this matter, Feng Hailan said. His tone was a bit heavy, and he was already putting on the airs of a senior brother. At that moment, there was movement behind them. Soon, the mist was pushed aside, and 3 people walked out. Moon in Well, Blood Spear, and Ruin Star. They each held a small pendant in their hands that was emitting light and dispersing the mist. Clearly, they had also received Celestial Sovereign Eternal Desolation's favor, and he had given them the key to ascend Mount Tianhuang. Why didn't Ling Han have it? Speaking of Ling Han and Huai Jian, Moon in Well and Ruin Star were shocked. You are. Feng Hailan's gaze swept over them. These 3 all held Celestial Sovereign Eternal Desolation's tokens. This meant that he now had 3 more juniors. This meant that the competition was about to intensify. I am Blood Spear. I'm the Ruin Star. I'm Moon in the Well. Moon in Well and the other 2 announced their names, but all of them had arrogant expressions, without the slightest reverence. This was the pride of a Super Emperor Star. Feng Hailan's brows furrowed, but he quickly put the matter aside and focused on Ling Han. If you don't dare to fight me, then scram down the mountain. Without Heavenly Lord Heng Huang's keepsake, there was no need for him to be nice to Ling Han at all. Huai Jian frowned, thinking that he might have done something bad with his good intentions. Moon in Well and the other 2 had all received the favor of the Heavenly Lord of Eternal Wilderness, so it was impossible that Ling Han, who was even stronger, did not. That could only mean one thing. Heavenly Lord Eternal Desolation already knew that he had brought Ling Han here, so he couldn't be bothered to show himself again and give him a keepsake. But now that things had come to this, it was too late for him to regret it. Moon in Well and the other 2 did not expect to see Ling Han fighting Heavenly Lord Eternal Desolation's disciple as soon as they arrived. They could not help but be intrigued. However, no matter how highly they regarded Ling Han, they did not think he was a match for Feng Hailan. There was no helping it. The difference in their realms was obvious. Ling Han chuckled, but his expression turned sinister. Since you're looking for a beating, I'll fulfill your wish. Ha, what shameless boasting! Feng Hailan was so angry that he laughed. A mere 8 Lotus 11-leaf cultivator dared to say that he wanted to beat him up? Where did he get his courage from? Ling Han extended his right hand and crooked his finger. Bring it on, you're asking for a beating. Feng Hailan roared. His voice was like the birth of a primordial monster, shocking everyone within millions of miles. He attacked brazenly and threw a punch. Billions of meteors came crashing down from the skies, intending to kill Ling Han. Since Ling Han was not from his bloodline, what did it matter if he killed him? Did a heavenly lord's disciple need a reason to kill someone? Ling Han's gaze was cold. He bent his legs slightly and sprang forward. In an instant he burst forth with terrifying speed. Bam, bam, bam. The meteors fell one after another, but they were all destroyed by Feng Hailan's punches. Huai Jian, Shuegu, and the others were shocked. They knew that Ling Han was strong, but no matter how strong he was, there was still a limit. After all, he was only an 8 Lotus 11-leaf cultivator. At most, his combat strength would be at the peak of the 9 Lotus 1-leaf stage. However, Feng Hailan's combat strength was definitely above the 2 Lotus 9 Lotus 2-leaf stage. This was a gap that could not be crossed. However, Ling Han did not care what they were thinking. He swung his fists repeatedly, and the meteors that came crashing down were all destroyed by his punches. He was already in front of Feng Hailan, and his fist was headed straight for his opponent's face. Feng Hailan was shocked and puzzled. He even felt an inexplicable chill. This kind of power was inconceivable even for an imperial star like him. However, he was not stupid enough to take Ling Han's punch. He hastily roared, and his right hand formed a claw as he pecked at Ling Han. Boom! Their hands collided, instantly triggering a terrifying energy storm that swept into the sky like a raging dragon. Moon and Well and the others widened their eyes. This was because Ling Han was not at a disadvantage in this attack. In fact, he seemed to have the upper hand. No power of the rule. This is pure brute force. But how is that possible? Without the rule, no amount of power can cause any damage. Huai Jian pondered for a long time before saying, no, he's still using the rule, but it's a rule that we can't understand. Was there such a rule? Moon and Well and the others looked at each other. If that was not the case, they would not be able to accept that pure brute force could go up against the 9 Lotus 1-leaf imperial star. It should be noted that even if the ancestral king had his power of the rule reduced, his combat strength would only be at the 6 Lotus level. While they were still in the midst of their shock, Ling Han's furious fists continued to rain down blows upon Feng Hailan. Who did he offend? First it was the 4 wilderness cloud, and now it was Feng Hailan. Did they think he was a pushover? In that case, let's go all out. Huai Jian and the others were about to go crazy. Feng Hailan was actually at a disadvantage. Moreover, it was an absolute disadvantage. He was being suppressed by Ling Han. This kind of combat strength should be at the peak of the 9 Lotus 2-leaf, right? Huai Jian gulped. He was a 9 Lotus 1-leaf imperial star, and a super imperial star at that. Even though he had just reached this level, he only had the combat strength of an early stage 9 Lotus 2-leaf imperial star. However, this was his limit. If he wanted to unleash more combat strength, he would have to use his ultimate moves. What about Ling Han? Even if he had been using his ultimate moves, he should not have been this aggressive. He had even said that he did not want to suppress Ling Han with his realm. However, if the two of them were to fight, would he be able to withstand more than 100 of Ling Han's moves? Bam bam bam. Ling Han unleashed his power and closed in on Feng Hailan. Every punch he threw was like countless stars colliding together, causing Feng Hailan to cough up blood. Crack. His fist landed on Feng Hailan's face, forcefully shattering half of his face. His bones were pulverized, and his flesh was a bloody mess. He no longer had a trace of the angel tribe's elegance. Ling Han followed up with a knee arch bam. A muffled sound came from Feng Hailan's body. His heart, liver, spleen, and lungs were all blasted apart. Chapter 2357. Feng Hailan screamed in pain. His spirit, qi, and spirit were greatly weakened. He had long cultivated the body's secret realm, but now that he was beaten up by Ling Han, it was only natural that he was gravely injured. "What are you shouting for? Aren't you very stubborn?" Ling Han threw him onto the ground, and then stomped down hard on him. There was a cracking sound, and Feng Hailan instantly let out a shrill cry. His left leg had been forcefully broken, and the broken bones were visible, red and white. "How does it feel to be bullied?" Ling Han stomped again, and Feng Hailan's right leg was broken as well. His knee caved in, and only some minced meat was left to hold his calf together. "Feels good, right?" Ling Han smirked. He raised his leg high and aimed at Feng Hailan's genitals. Feng Hailan was about to go mad from anxiety. Being injured by an expert like Ling Han would leave behind serious repercussions. For example, if a heavenly venerable one or an ancestral king didn't treat him, he would need at least a few thousand years to recover from his broken bones. If his genitals were crushed, not being able to use his little brother for a few thousand years was a small matter. What was more important was the physical and psychological humiliation. He would live in the shadows for the rest of his life. On the other side, the forbearing Cloud was pounced on by Little Terror as well. Little Terror bit his buttocks, causing him to sprawl on the ground in pain. He kept kicking his legs, looking as though he was better off dead than alive. This man and beast, master and servant, both of them were too ferocious. As expected of the #1 expert in the Battle of the Thousand Academies. "Impressive!" Applause rang out. A young girl from the Devil tribe appeared. Her facial features were exquisite, but when paired with the appearance of a Devil tribe member, she did not conform to Ling Han and the others' standards of beauty. However, the Ruined Star's eyes immediately lit up. He was a genuine Devil tribe member. Ling Han stepped on Feng Hailan, but his gaze shifted to the young girl from the Devil tribe. His eyes narrowed slightly. She was a 2-leaf 9 Lotus Realm expert. Zi Shuang. The demon girl pointed at herself. She had an incomparably sexy body, and although she still had a tail, she had a different kind of charm. "Junior brother Ba, you can't really be thinking of killing my junior brother here, right?" She covered her mouth and laughed lightly, as if she had no intention of saving Feng Hailan and Si Huangyun. Feng Hailan and Si Huangyun, on the other hand, were well aware that the competition between fellow disciples was incredibly intense. This was especially true for those of the same cultivation level. Since they had the same cultivation resources, they would definitely fight to the death. This was also Heavenly Lord Eternal Desolation's intention. Just like raising goo, only the strongest would be able to stand out. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "This person wants to kill me. Why can't I kill him? This is my junior brother. If you kill him, then I'll have to kill you." Zi Shuang sighed as if it was a pity. This person was interesting. She didn't say she wanted to save Feng Hailan. Instead, she said she wanted to take revenge. It was as if she didn't care about this junior brother of hers at all. However, since they were both of the Eternal Desolation bloodline, she had to at least show some mercy and eliminate the murderer. "Moreover, even if I'm not your match, there are still 7 senior brothers and 2 senior sisters here. 7 of them are 3-leaf 9 Lotus Realm cultivators, and 2 of them are ancestral kings. Junior brother Ba, do you still want to kill someone?" She stared at Ling Han with her large, glittering eyes. To a demon like her, Ling Han was very handsome. Ling Han's expression was cold. Although his body skills had surpassed his realm, he could at most match a 3-leaf 9 Lotus Realm cultivator. Anything more was just wishful thinking. Forget an ancestral king, even a 3-leaf 9 Lotus Emperor star could give him trouble. However, he was not someone who was used to being threatened. He exerted some force with his feet, and Feng Hailan instantly flailed his limbs with all his might. His throat was being stepped on by Ling Han, and a terrifying pressure was exerted on him, making him feel as if death was really at hand. "Junior brother Ba." Zi Shuang's expression changed again. She smiled and said, "We're all family from now on. Of course, we should be harmonious, don't you think?" A smile slowly spread across Ling Han's face, and he said, "You're right, senior sister." He slowly retracted his foot and whistled softly. Little Terror immediately let go of his throat, then leaped up and scurried to his feet. He hugged his leg like a cute pet trying to please him. Zi Shuang revealed a wary expression. Not only was Ling Han incredibly powerful, but he was also flexible. He didn't have the stubborn arrogance of an ordinary emperor star. It would be very, very troublesome to make an enemy out of someone like him. That's the wise thing to do. She smiled sweetly. There were a total of 99 Lotus disciples under Celestial Venerable Eternal Wilderness. They were all competitors, but if they fought alone, they could easily be ganged up on. Thus, she also wanted to find an ally. Naturally, Ling Han, who was also from the demon race and was extremely powerful, was a very good candidate. Ling Han also smiled. Thank you for the compliment, senior sister. Follow me up the mountain. Zi Shuang didn't even look at Feng Hailan and Si Huang Yun. As long as they didn't die, she couldn't be bothered with them. She led the way, her two small buttocks swaying in an alluring manner. Even the angels, sacred beasts, and insects had to admit that this woman's figure was very hot. Needless to say, the ruined star's gaze never left her. It was no wonder he was tempted. There weren't many emperor stars that were worthy of him. It was even more difficult to find a beauty from the demon race. No one paid attention to Feng Hailan and Si Huang Yun. After a long while, they finally managed to get up. One was covered in bite wounds, while the other had both legs broken, his abdomen torn, and half his head missing. I swear I won't be human if I don't get revenge. I'll definitely tear this kid to pieces. The two of them said through gritted teeth. After exchanging a glance, they both smiled coldly. Ling Han and the others followed Zi Shuang up the mountain. After walking for a long time, the fog finally receded, and they all put away their message talismans. Zi Shuang didn't need to. The Eternal Wilderness bloodline all cultivated special techniques, so they weren't affected by the fog. Otherwise, even the 18 Lotus ancestral kings would feel dizzy. That was because this was a Celestial Venerable's technique. Come, have some tea first. Master's main body has been cultivating, and he's left a wisp of his consciousness outside. He should be back in a few days. Zi Shuang smiled as she called out to everyone. This was a living room. It wasn't very luxurious, but it had its own atmosphere. All the furniture in the living room was made of stone. It was shockingly old, and it gave off an ancient feeling. Serve the tea. Zi Shuang called out softly. Before long, a servant came over with a tray of tea. Ling Han and the others all looked surprised. It wasn't that this servant was shockingly handsome, or that his cultivation was ridiculously high, but that he was actually a human. A human? A human had actually appeared in the Outlander's territory? This was a man who looked to be in his 30s. He had a submissive expression, and he looked like a loyal servant. Ling Han's heart couldn't help but clench. He never would have thought that he would meet a human here. Moreover, this person seemed to have long since forgotten about the Outlander's hatred and was extremely servile. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 2358. Why are there scum from a super low-level plane here? Su Xing was the first to ask. Firstly, he was indeed curious, and secondly, he was deliberately chatting with Zi Shuang. This question answered everyone's doubts, and they all looked towards Zi Shuang. Oh, Lord Master personally entered that super low-level plane, the Celestial Realm, and killed countless powerhouses. At the same time, he also captured some and brought them back. These are the descendants of those human powerhouses, Zi Shuang said lightly. She had clearly long since understood that it was strange. Why raise these scum? Shuegu asked, and he even grinned, revealing a cruel and bloodthirsty expression. Those scum were only worthy of being eaten by him. Zi Shuang smiled and said, Master wants to use these humans for research. Who knows, they might be able to make us unafraid of that plane's heaven and earth suppression. What? Lord Eternal Desolation actually has this kind of ability? Everyone was shocked. Apart from Ling Han and the others, everyone revealed looks of excitement. The foreign realm was stronger than the celestial realm, but they had been unable to conquer the celestial realm for so long. Firstly, the laws of the two realms were different, so they could not fight for long. Secondly, After they entered the celestial realm, they would be suppressed by the power of heaven and earth in the celestial realm. If they could solve the latter problem, then the powerhouses of the foreign realm would be able to march straight in, and with their superior numbers and quality, they would be able to exterminate most of the living beings in the celestial realm. In this way, the celestial realm would be heavily damaged, and the foreign realm would be able to easily devour the celestial realm. This was the planar war. If they wanted to destroy a plane, then they needed to exterminate all living beings on that plane. Otherwise, even if dozens or hundreds of celestial venerables joined forces, they would not be able to defeat the world itself. It was unknown whether there were stronger celestial venerables in the higher realms who could truly defeat the world. Ling Han's heart was pounding. The foreign realm was really working tirelessly to invade the celestial realm. If Celestial Lord Eternal Desolation really succeeded, it would definitely be the worst news for the celestial realm. Fortunately, the passage between the two realms was blocked, and the energy was as violent as the sea. Even the 18 Lotus Ancestor Kings could not cross it, and celestial venerables would be heavily injured if they tried to cross it. If they were targeted by the world, then they would probably be killed. Therefore, for at least several tens of billions of years, the immortal realms would be safe. Haha, does that super low-level plane think that we'll have to wait tens of billions of years because of the energy storms? The Void Star sneered. If only a few celestial venerables had already attacked them. In a billion years at most, we'll be able to sweep away the energy storms and start the war again. Senior Apprentice Sister Zishuang, how long more before Lord Eternal Desolation succeeds? Moon and Well asked. I don't know either. Zishuang shook her head. However, from the words that Lord Master occasionally revealed, it should only be a matter of a few billion years. Everyone was excited. Compared to the planar wars, which were measured in terms of epochs, billions of years were nothing more than the blink of an eye. Ling Han's heart tightened. He was too optimistic, not expecting the foreign Empyreans to be so enthusiastic about the invasion. That's right, they were also being attacked by the Shen Ni plane. If they didn't take down the immortal domain as soon as possible, then they would be finished. The celestial venerables of the immortal region are also working with us to speed up the elimination of the energy storm, Zishuang said. This was an incredibly shocking piece of news. Even Ling Han couldn't help but raise his brows, feeling an urge to curse. Not only did the celestial venerables of the immortal domain not resist, but they actually helped the other side steal from the celestial realm. What did this mean? Hu Niu and the other two girls' expressions also changed, but Huai Jian and the others didn't seem to be surprised, as if this kind of news was very normal to them. Come on, the betrayal of the celestial venerables of the immortal domain wasn't a secret in the other side. Otherwise, if they heard this kind of news, everyone would probably be shocked. Now, the behavior of Huai Jian and the others was obviously abnormal, too abnormal. Esteemed guests, please have some tea. The human servant served them fragrant tea one by one, his expression respectful. Ling Han sighed inwardly. This person should have been instilled with the idea of being a servant from birth. Putting aside the fact that he was just serving tea now, even if he was asked to go to the battlefield to kill his fellow celestial realm compatriots, he would definitely do it without hesitation. Senior Apprentice Sister Zishuang, do you have many servants like this here? Shuegu suddenly asked. Many. Zishuang nodded. Then I won't be polite, Shuegu said, and suddenly transformed into his original form. Xiu, he turned into a line of blood and shot into that human's head. That human didn't even make a sound. His legs directly weakened, and he fell down with a loud bang. The difference in cultivation level and strength was too great. Shuegu flashed again, and leaped out of that human's head, turning back into human form. He smacked his lips and said, though the celestial realm is backward, the living beings it nurtures are not bad. Moreover, eating their souls and brains can also obtain a sliver of the regulations of that heaven and earth. If the quantity is enough, and the quality is good enough, there is a chance to cultivate the regulations of that heaven and earth. The speed at which he suddenly killed was too fast, and even Ling Han didn't have time to stop him. He really didn't think that Shuegu would actually be so deranged. To the people of the other side, What difference was there between the living beings of the celestial realm and food? Ho ho, I have no interest in devouring those filthy living beings. Let's wait for Lord Eternal Desolation to create the secret art and cultivate it before entering the celestial realm, Jing Zhongyue said. At that time, we should also have reached the ancestral king tier. I don't mind, Su Xing said, a sinister expression on his face. Shuegu was just about to speak. Peng, his face was heavily punched, and it just happened to hit his mouth. Pooh, he instantly spat out a mouthful of blood, and half of his teeth fell out. He looked at Ling Han in shock, his mouth wide open, and his eyes filled with doubt and anger. Why did you hit me? Did I offend you? Ling Han retracted his fist and calmly said, You suddenly felt that I was annoying, so I punched you. What, you don't like it? Fuck, of course I don't like it. Shuegu almost roared out, but he forced himself to suppress it. So what if I don't like it? So what if I fight with my life on the line? Can I beat Ling Han? Ling Han was indeed unreasonable, but in this world, there was only strength, and the bigger the fist was the reason. I'll remember it, he said through gritted teeth. Then he gritted his teeth so hard that they made cracking sounds. Ling Han did not care, because after entering the Outlander realm he would not encounter the people of the Celestial realm, so he would not see the scene of the people of the Outlander realm harming the people of the Celestial realm. This also made him temporarily forget about the cruelty of the creatures of the Outlander realm. But in reality, this was the contempt, hatred, and disdain that was rooted in their bloodline. They thought that the people of the Celestial realm were only their toys and food, and this would never change. At this moment, Ling Han really wanted to blast Shuegu into smithereens. However, such an action would be too rash. He could not only focus on the small matters, but not the big ones. Killing one Shuegu would not be able to solve the problems of the Celestial realm. Even if this one died, there would still be 1,000 or 10,000 Shuegu in the Outlander realm, and they might even be 10 times, 100 times more cruel than Shuegu. When he became a celestial sovereign, he would turn the Outlander realm upside down. Huai Jian and the others were also very confused. This punch of Ling Han's was too inexplicable. Even Zi Shuang was surprised. Although the internal strife of the Eternal Desolation realm was very intense, it was too strange to attack for no reason at all. Chapter 2360. I heard that there are quite a few disciples who want to become Master's disciples. He looked at Ling Han with a smile and said, There must be a strange pattern or coincidence. The disciples that Master Feng Jiu has accepted are all extremely powerful. My 9th junior brother is the first of all the disciples to reach the 18 Lotus Ancestral Kings. 19th junior brother caught up from behind. Not only did he become one of the 18 Lotus Ancestor Kings, his battle prowess is also world-shaking. He's one of the best among the Ancestor Kings. Although junior brother 29th has just entered the ranks of the Ancestral Kings, the geniuses of the same generation as him only have eyes for 9 Lotus. Now, one of you will definitely become the 39th disciple. I'm a little curious. What a coincidence! Ling Han didn't think much of it. Although there was such a thing as luck in heaven and earth, he wasn't a person of this heaven and earth. How could luck be added to him? No fault is merit. But since Voidwalker had said so, Ling Han smiled and said, I will remember Senior Voidwalker's words and strive to rank 39th. Ji Kong nodded, and then he said, Master is in closed-door cultivation here, and he forbids anyone from approaching it. It's not that we would disturb him, it's just that his strength is too formidable. A single thought from him is capable of obliterating the world. Once you cross this line, you won't be in the safe zone that Master has set up, so I'm standing guard here. Firstly, it's to borrow Master's blessing, and secondly, it's to prevent the new junior brothers and sisters from being careless and accidentally entering this zone. Ling Han nodded and cupped his fists. Thank you for the reminder, senior brother. He was curious. Since the Celestial Sovereign was so powerful, why would he need to set up a safe zone? So what if he was in seclusion? If he wanted this place to be safe, then it would be watertight. If he wanted this place to be dangerous, then it would be a dangerous place that even the 18 Lotus Ancestor Kings would have a headache over. Something's wrong. Ling Han felt a strong sense of danger in his heart. He wanted to stop Heavenly Sovereign Heng Huang from researching a method to adapt to the energy of the heavens and earth in the immortal realm. And this Heavenly Sovereign's true body had always been in seclusion, researching such a method. Destruction was necessary. There were two methods. The first was to draw all the humans into the Black Tower. Without any materials, how would they be able to research? The second was to catch this old guy by surprise. When he was cultivating in seclusion, he hated being disturbed the most. But a mere 9 Lotus level of strength dares to disturb a heavenly lord? No matter how he thought about it, it was just wishful thinking. It was better to take the first path. Ling Han bade farewell to Ji Kong and did not wander around again. Instead, he returned to his place and waited patiently. A few days later, a wisp of heavenly venerable Heng Huang's divine sense descended. But immediately, panic and unease rose in everyone's hearts. It was as if their souls were trembling. Ling Han understood that this was because an Empyrean was an existence that transcended the laws, while everyone else cultivated the laws. Thus, encountering an Empyrean was like a mouse encountering a cat. The two sides were simply not on the same level. He wasn't afraid, because he had once been a ruler of heaven and earth. Although he wasn't a true ruler, he was still a quasi-Empyrean existence. In terms of level, he wasn't weak. In fact, from a certain perspective, he had once been the head of a chicken, while the tail of an Empyrean was the tail of an ox. A thought suddenly rose in his mind. Why couldn't an Empyrean teach an Empyrean? Yes, following an Empyrean, learning from him, and absorbing his aura was indeed helpful in becoming an Empyrean. However, if too much time passed, the might of an Empyrean would be unknowingly carved into one's bones, and one would live under his shadow. Since that was the case, how could one become an Empyrean? Thus, an Empyrean could be close to an Empyrean, but not for too long. Greetings, Master. Greetings, Lord Heng Huang. Everyone bowed. Although Ling Han was displeased, he had to put on an act for now. Thus, he bowed together with the three women. Empyrean Heng Huang's divine sense took the form of a demon. Because only holy beasts and the insect tribe needed to take human form, this divine sense took the form of Empyrean Heng Huang's true form. He was very short, even a little hunched. A single horn grew from his head, and his skin was as black as ink. His skin was no different from that of an ordinary demon, crimson like blood. In terms of appearance, he really didn't stand out in the slightest. Celestial kings had extraordinary splendor, but he was very ordinary, so ordinary that people would forget him with a single glance. Only when his gaze swept over did Ling Han realize that his own consciousness actually paused. It was as if time had frozen, and when he woke up, he didn't know how much time had passed. Perhaps it was only an instant, or perhaps it was billions of years. Ling Han even felt that Small Tower had awakened, and was exuding a strong sense of wariness. The Empyrean treasure tool was actually afraid. I miscalculated. The vitality of this living being should be close to 16,000 points. My improved heaven-deceiving technique is unable to deceive his true form. Thankfully, this is only a spiritual fluctuation of his. Wall's voice sounded. Ling Han almost wanted to strangle this guy to death. If he made a mistake, he would lose his life. The activation of the Black Tower required time, and his thoughts also required time, and this bit of time was enough for Empyrean to kill him hundreds of millions of times. Who would have thought that Wall would actually have a time when he was so unreliable? Wait, the vitality of Empyrean was 15,000, so what the hell was this close to 16,000? Ling Han used his encrypted divine sense to ask Wall, 15,000 is a Empyrean, and what is 16,000? Great Empyrean? Of course it's also a Empyrean, but an even more powerful Empyrean, Wall said unhurriedly. Wally said unhurriedly, also, you're a pure life form, so your ability to hide your spiritual waves can't be compared to mine. It's better if you don't talk to me, or else the chances of being discovered will be as high as 57%. Sure enough, Just as he finished speaking, he felt Empyrean Heng Huang's gaze move back, and turned to look at Ling Han's face, seeming to be slightly interested before sliding away. You all? Empyrean Heng Huang paused on the faces of Ling Han, Huai Jian, Shuegu, Moon in the Well, and Ruin Star. You all represent the most outstanding new generation in the recent epoch of this plane. Today, this Empyrean will take you all as his disciples, and I hope that you can improve further and reach a similar height as this Empyrean. Thank you, Master, for your guidance. The five said at the same time. The Empress, Hu Niu, and bewitching Maiden Ro were not qualified to become Empyrean Heng Huang's disciple. They were only Ling Han's dependents. Empyrean Heng Huang nodded. This Empyrean does not like unnecessary formalities. Just kowtow, and you will be my disciples in the future. Disciple pays respect to Lord Master. Ling Han and the others all knelt down, but when Ling Han kowtowed, he said in his mind, "Damn old man, I kowtow to you today, but you have to kowtow back in the future." Empyrean Heng Huang revealed a smile, and looked at the faces of the five again before saying, Huai Jian was the first disciple chosen by this Empyrean, so he is naturally your senior brother, and will be my 37th disciple. Huai Jian nodded respectfully. Shuegu, you are the 38th disciple. Yes. Moon in the Well, you are the 39th disciple. Yes. Ruin Star, you are the 40th disciple. Yes. Tyrant. Heavenly Venerable Heng Huang turned to Ling Han and said, You should have been ranked 38th, but you were together with little 37, so I didn't deliberately manifest myself, so I'll take it that you're old. Chapter 2361. Yes. Ling Han also nodded respectfully. He just wanted to feel the aura of an Empyrean and didn't care whether he was the 39th disciple or not. These are some of the insights I've gained from my recent research. I'll bestow them to you. The Heavenly Lord Eternal Wilderness flicked his fingers. Shio shio shio. 5 rays of light shot out from his hand and entered the foreheads of Ling Han and the others. The 5 of them hurriedly bowed to express their thanks again. However, Heavenly Lord Heng Huang merely waved his hand, and this wisp of divine sense instantly disappeared. Ling Han examined himself, only to find that there was an additional ball of light in his sea of knowledge. With a light touch, thousands of laws immediately circulated, as if the world itself had materialized. If he comprehended it in this way, then his cultivation would definitely yield twice the result with half the effort. Unfortunately, it was useless against Ling Han. This was because he had the magic cube of origin, which was of great help to his cultivation. However, it was still a treasure. Why? Because it contained Heavenly Lord Eternal Desolation's heaven and earth energy. The reason why an Empyrean was so powerful was because they had jumped out of the scope of the rules. They had touched upon the essence of the world and could directly use the power of the world. Just now, when Heavenly Lord Eternal Wilderness bestowed the 5 of them, he had unavoidably given some of his power to them. Although it was pitifully small, it was essentially no different. For others, it was simply impossible for them to sense this strength. Even the 18 Lotus Ancestor Kings would find it hard to do so. Only quasi-Empyreans who had touched upon the strength of the world and were close to comprehending the essence of the world could sense this. Coincidentally, Ling Han was such an existence. He had once been a quasi-Empyrean, and even if his strength and cultivation realm had fallen, he still had his sensitivity towards the energy of the world. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to extract the energy of Suzy. This is Empyrean Eternal Desolation's Tao. Ling Han thought to himself. Only by knowing oneself and knowing one's enemy could one emerge victorious in 100 battles. Now that he understood Empyrean Heng Huang's Tao in advance, if the 2 of them were to fight in the future, he would definitely be able to gain the upper hand. The prerequisite was that he had become an Empyrean. Ling Han looked astonished. In fact, he was shocked to the extreme. Within the power of Heavenly Lord Eternal Wilderness, he discovered a few wisps of aura that belonged to the celestial realm. How is that possible? Heavenly Venerable Heng Huang was an expert of the foreign realm, so how could he have extracted the intrinsic power of the celestial realm? It could be said that celestial venerable eternal wilderness was actually an elite from the celestial realm. However, his power clearly contained the aura of the celestial realm, and it was dominant. The old fellow was researching on how to not be suppressed by the heavens and earth of the immortal realm. Was he already about to succeed? No, not being suppressed by the heaven and earth was one thing, but possessing the power of another plane was another. Even the Shenanai plane had to absorb all the knowledge of the higher planes before sending Wally and a super expert into this plane to steal the power of heaven and earth from the other plane. Ling Han was incomparably curious. Could it be that heavenly venerable Heng Huang had gone to the celestial domain to cultivate, and thus comprehended the essence of the celestial domain? However, the celestial realm's plane level was low, and as soon as a heavenly venerable appeared, he would be targeted. Foreign heavenly venerables would even be suppressed. This was no laughing matter. Otherwise, when 9 great heavenly venerables attacked the celestial realm together, Ling Han did not believe that heavenly venerable origin-born would be ferocious enough to fight against 9 of them alone. It must be the suppression of the immortal region that allowed heavenly venerable original birth to create such a miracle. However, it was precisely because of this that it was too inconceivable that heavenly venerable eternal wilderness could cultivate the power of heaven and earth from the celestial realm. Wait, I missed a clue. Ling Han thought of the human slaves on Mount Tianhuang. They were living beings from the celestial realm. Could it be related to heavenly venerable eternal wilderness cultivating such power? These living beings were too insignificant. Logically speaking, it was impossible for a heavenly venerable to cultivate the power of heaven and earth from another plane. However, looking at the current situation, was there a more reasonable guess? I'll discuss this with Wally later. 5 junior brothers and junior sisters, congratulations, congratulations. Once heavenly venerable eternal wilderness left, people like Zi Shuang and the others walked up and congratulated Ling Han and the others. Previously, heavenly venerable eternal wilderness had accepted 36 disciples. Among them, 11 had already completed their apprenticeship. Some were fighting against the invasion of the Xian-Ni plane, some were invading the celestial realm, and some were walking between heaven and earth, longing to take the final step and become a heavenly venerable. Now, there were only 25 disciples here. Among them, as many as 19 were still in 9 Lotus. They were all disciples that heavenly venerable eternal wilderness had accepted in the past few 100 million years. Previously, heavenly venerable eternal wilderness had been very cautious in accepting disciples. He did not ask for great talent, but each had their own unique characteristics. It was unlike now, where he only accepted disciples with astonishing talent. These disciples all had their own ulterior motives, especially those at the level of 9 Lotus. Everyone would soon become direct competitors. Although they spoke warmly, there was already the glint of blades and shadow of swords in the dark. For example, Feng Hailan and Si Huang Yun were glaring at Ling Han coldly, not concealing their hostility at all. Ling Han was not interested in paying attention to these things. After casually saying a few words to the crowd, he brought the 3 girls back to his residence. Then, he immediately voiced out the suspicions he had in his heart. This naturally shocked the 3 girls, and they began to speculate about heavenly venerable eternal wilderness's identity. Could he be a heavenly venerable who had betrayed the celestial realm? Ling Han asked Wall, but Wall directly said that there was insufficient information and that he could not make any inferences. Ling Han thought for a long time and decided to put this matter aside for now. Instead, he had to save all the slaves here. It was not important whether these people needed Ling Han to save them, because they had been completely brainwashed. Helping them escape the fate of being slaves would instead make them hate him. However, if their existence allowed heavenly venerable eternal wilderness to cultivate the celestial realm's power of heaven and earth, then no matter what, Ling Han had to take them away. He waited for a few days and quietly gained a complete grasp of the situation on Mount Tianhuang. He knew where the human slaves lived, and then waited for heavenly venerable eternal wilderness's wisp of divine sense to leave. If he did something bad under the eyes of this heavenly venerable eternal wilderness, he would definitely be caught red-handed. 3 years later, Heavenly Venerable Eternal Wilderness received a message from another Heavenly Venerable and hurried to attend a Heavenly Venerable conference. Ling Han finally found an opportunity. He took away 1/3 of the human slaves, and when he wanted to take a few more, he alarmed an ancestral king, so he could only use the Black Tower to conceal himself and then retreat. The next day, a huge uproar broke out on Mount Tianhuang. Someone actually broke into the Heavenly Venerable realm and stole people. Heavenly Venerable Eternal Wilderness's main body naturally could not be disturbed, and his wisp of divine sense had gone far away. Thus, this matter fell on the 2 ancestral kings here. Originally, everything here was managed by ancestral King Navarre. He had only broken through to 10 lotuses 700 million years ago, and now he was already 12 lotuses. His progress was astonishingly fast. Because he was a monarch tier, even without the guidance of a Heavenly Venerable, he could reach 13 or 14 lotuses on his own. However, because this matter concerned the Eternal Wilderness's dignity, he invited Ji Kong, and the 2 ancestral kings investigated this matter together. This was naturally fruitless. The protective barrier of the mountain was not damaged in the slightest, so they could not understand how this great thief had managed to break in. More importantly, why had this great thief taken away so many human slaves? Chapter 2362. Now that the lockdown was tight, Ling Han naturally wouldn't act again, and instead waited patiently. Not long after, a rumor spread through the mountains. This thief came from the inner circle of the Eternal Desolation, and the target of his attack was Ling Han and the other 4 new disciples. Why did nothing happen before, but something happened when they arrived? Huai Jian and the others didn't bother to argue. What a joke, what did they want those lowly slaves for? Even Shuegu scoffed. He only treated those slaves as snacks, and didn't need to steal them. This kind of rumor naturally had no basis, but why was it spread? Ling Han knew that it must have been thought up by those senior brothers and sisters, with the goal of slandering the 5 of them. The Eternal Desolation had always been fighting with each other. There were so many senior brothers and sisters, how could they fight for favor without some tricks? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh inwardly. They actually guessed it blindly, but these people definitely couldn't guess his true purpose of kidnapping these humans. Because of the 2 ancestral kings guarding, Ling Han didn't have a chance to act, and could only continue to wait. This wait, another 5 years passed. A guest suddenly came to Heaven Desolate Mountain. It was a bug race, but it had turned into a human. Its arms were still in bug race form, covered in black scales. It didn't have hands, but turned into 2 giant pincers that looked like sharp weapons made of immortal gold. So its junior brother Liao Kong under Lord Yellow Springs. Everyone welcomed him in, and introduced him to those who didn't know his identity. Yellow Springs was the title of a Heavenly Venerable. Liao Kong nodded to everyone. Lord Master invites Lord Eternal Desolation over to discuss some matters, and just happened to find that a volcano erupted, flowing with source power of heaven and earth. It will be very beneficial to senior brothers and sisters of 9 Lotus, as well as junior brothers and sisters who are about to break through to 9 Lotus, so he ordered me to take you there. Although the martial arts system of the foreign realm and the celestial realm were different, they were similar in some aspects. For example, the celestial realm had advanced from the Immortal Palace realm to the Ascending Origin realm, and the foreign realm had advanced from the 8 Lotus realm to the 9 Lotus realm. These were all qualitative changes. The celestial realm had transformed origin power into source power. This was source power, and its quality was far superior to origin power. Why was it said that even if celestial kings did not have the power of regulations, their battle prowess was still comparable to a severing mundane tier? This was because the level of their source power was higher. Otherwise, no matter how powerful they would only be like a burly man waving a piece of paper to slap someone. In the other side, this step was similarly a qualitative change in soul force. The leap from the Immortal Palace realm to the Ascending Origin realm could be done slowly, and he could slowly convert his origin power into source power bit by bit. In layman's terms, it was compression. 10,000 or 100 million parts of origin energy could be condensed into 1 part of origin energy. The ratio was different, and the quality of origin energy was also different. The more intense the compression, the better. However, this kind of conversion speed was very slow. If he could borrow the power of heaven and earth, the conversion speed would be much faster. Thus, breaking through to the ascending origin tier could be done in seclusion, or one could go to a mystery realm of heaven and earth. Furthermore, even if he advanced to the ascending origin tier, the process of condensing source power would be very slow. With the help of the mystery realm of heaven and earth, it would be much faster. However, this kind of mystery realm of heaven and earth did not exist just because one wanted to. Instead, the heaven and earth had to erupt with source power, and only cultivators could borrow it. This source power was actually the condensation of regulations. For example, the 9 heavens flame was the materialization of the regulations of heaven and earth, and did not have much to do with the power of heaven and earth. Hearing Kong say this, as long as they were 8 or 9 lotus cultivators, they were all very happy. The 8 lotus cultivators here had all reached the peak stage, and were about to advance to 9 lotus. They just needed the source power of heaven and earth to temper their bodies. Then let's set off immediately, Zishuang and the others said, appearing very anxious. Because there was a time limit for the eruption of source power of heaven and earth. Once they missed it, who knew how many years they would have to wait? For example, the volcano this time had erupted, and a large amount of source power of heaven and earth had surged out, but it did not mean that it would erupt again after a few years. This was a matter of luck. All right. Liao Kong nodded. In fact, he also wanted to go there as soon as possible. Everyone immediately set off. Liao Kong had come under the orders of the Heavenly Venerate, so he was naturally prepared. With a wave of his hand, a great dark river formed out of thin air, and only a small boat was floating on the river. Please board the boat, Liao Kong said, and was the first to jump onto the small boat. One by one, everyone boarded the boat. Instantly, the small boat broke through the waves at an astonishing speed, and the river continued to spread forward. In just one day, the river reached its end, and the small boat stopped. They had already arrived at the foot of a huge mountain, and the mountain was spewing lava. Black flames burned the sky, as if the sky itself was about to melt. This is Golden Cloud Mountain, Zishuang exclaimed. Even if we used the transportation gate to get here, it would take us as long as 3 years. But now, in just one day, they had arrived at their destination. Everyone looked at Liao Kong's hand enviously. The river and small boat had already been stored away. This is a Dharma treasure that my master lent me. I still have to return it to my master later, Liao Kong said with a smile. Indeed, only a heavenly venerate could have such a heaven-defying method. It was too shocking. Everyone, the 2 heavenly venerates treat the citizens of this realm equally, so they do not view this mystery realm as their private property. Thus, if we ascend the mountain, we will encounter other cultivators, Liao Kong said with a serious expression. In order to fight for the source power of heaven and earth, everyone cannot avoid a fight. The 2 heavenly venerates mean that they will not interfere, and we will have to rely on ourselves for everything. Huai Jian and the others all looked proud. Which one of them was not a prodigy, especially the disciples they had accepted later? At least they had started from the Emperor's Star, so would they be afraid of competition? Even if they encountered a 3-leaf 9 lotus elite, they could easily escape if they were no match for him. They would not lose their lives. Then let's go. Everyone was filled with anticipation. Although they might not be able to obtain the mystical power of heaven and earth after coming to this kind of mystery realm, it was not certain. Almost everyone moved alone. Their resources were limited, so they naturally did their own things. Meanwhile, Ling Han set out towards the mountain with Hu Niu and the other 2 girls. Little Terra was still the size of a puppy, and was held in bewitching Maiden Rose's arms, looking very adorable. The little guy had already been forced to submit under Ling Han's tyrannical power. This was a stretch of endless mountains, and the volcano that was currently erupting lava was the main peak. It was said that there was a supreme pressure, and only ancestral kings could ascend to the peak. Thus, it was impossible to climb to the peak. The source power of heaven and earth gushed out along with the eruption of the volcano. If one could ascend to the peak and occupy the mouth of the volcano, it would be too easy to obtain the source power of heaven and earth. Of course, a heavenly venerate could do it, but they did not, so it was naturally beneath them to do so. If the disciples of heavenly venerates did not even have this bit of competitive awareness, then they should just get lost. The eruption of the volcano was irregular. The lava would sometimes erupt towards the east, and sometimes it would erupt towards the north. Sometimes it would erupt close, and sometimes it would erupt far, so they could forget about squatting down to guard it. Xiao, as the volcano erupted, a huge lava rock drew an arc in the sky, and then fell in the direction of Ling Han and the others. Peng, this was a huge rock, and it was still burning with raging flames. However, it could still be seen that this was a black rock, and it was filled with a feeling of primal chaos. Fuck, a primal chaos source rock. Chapter 2364. According to my conjecture, this should be a kind of substance that leans towards spiritual form, Wally said. He continued to scan the substance that emitted green light. This was the second round. Ling Han was surprised. There are actually things in this world that you don't know about. Of course. Wally, on the other hand, was very humble. I don't know how many planes there are in the origin world. I've only been to a high-level plane. Every plane has its own characteristics, but many of them are similar. Ling Han waved the civet cat in his hand. Can this thing be eaten? He wouldn't go crazy if he ate it, right? Just don't touch this thing, Wally said, pointing at the gray substance. Ling Han cracked a smile. Then let's eat it. They started a fire to roast meat and ate this civet cat. It was at the 8 lotus level after all, so its meat was delicious and contained rich energy. It was still slightly beneficial to everyone's cultivation. Finally, Ling Han carefully peeled off the gray substance and wanted to bring it into the Black Tower, but he suddenly discovered that he couldn't enter the Black Tower. It wasn't like the scroll from before that he couldn't enter, but he himself was also rejected outside the door. This thing is very dangerous, Small Tower's voice was heard. It's extremely likely to corrode my consciousness and lead me to destruction. What? Ling Han was truly shocked now. What kind of existence was the Black Tower? A celestial venerable treasure. However, Small Tower was actually afraid of this gray substance and was unwilling to take it into its body, which was equivalent to taking poison. But what kind of poison could poison a celestial venerable treasure to death? Obviously, Ling Han underestimated the terror of this substance. What exactly is this thing that even Wally doesn't know, and even Small Tower is afraid of it? Ling Han muttered. The entire Gold Cloud Mountain should be this kind of substance, but even for normal martial artists, as long as they didn't touch it for a long time, they wouldn't be affected. Why was that? The quality is extremely high, but because the quantity is not small, the influence has decreased, he guessed. Just as Ling Han was thinking, he discovered that the gray substance was actually evaporating and soon disappeared completely. They can't exist for long after they leave their living bodies, but I can feel that they haven't really disappeared. Instead, they've reintegrated into this world. Ling Han raised his head and looked at the erupting volcano. What is this place? Regardless of where this place was, since he was already here, he would naturally have to properly search for the primal chaos source stone. For it to be in the little pagoda back then, it was clear that it was an extremely good item. They wandered through the mountains, gradually going deeper and deeper. It was so quiet here that even stepping on a leaf would produce a loud sound. Sha sha sha. As they walked, they suddenly stopped. After a short while, a ray of light appeared in front of them. It was a male angel, Feng Hailan. Feng Hailan obviously hadn't expected that he would encounter Ling Han here. A flash of killing intent flashed across his face, but he immediately hid it. With a humph, he swaggered off. A flash of killing intent also flashed across Ling Han's face. If it weren't for the fact that he knew that the divine sense of the two heavenly venerables was here and could sweep over at any time, he would definitely chase after him and blast this guy into pieces. After seeing the cruelty of Shuegu, Ling Han knew that whether it was the demon tribe, the angel tribe, the holy beast tribe, or the insect tribe, they were all the same. He couldn't think that the angel tribe and the holy beast tribe were kind just because they hadn't attacked the celestial realm. There'll be a chance, Ling Han said in his mind. They continued to walk through the mountains. From time to time, they would encounter violent wild beasts, savages, and insects. No matter what it was, they were all incredibly crazy and only lived to kill. Ling Han and his group were still able to deal with the majority of the enemies. Little Terror was also an incredibly powerful being, and even if they encountered an opponent with 3 leaves of the 9 Lotus tribe, they could still fight for a while. Is there no pinnacle level in the Ascending Origin tier? Ling Han asked Small Tower. The Ascending Origin tier is the transition of the Celestial King tier, and it transforms the origin power in one's body into source power. There are 3 minor tiers: Small Accomplishment, Great Accomplishment, and Consummate. Every time one completes tempering and compression, it represents that one has advanced a minor tier. Small Tower explained in great detail this time. After 3 times, the origin power should have completely transformed into source power and reached the state of consummate. If you don't reach consummate after 3 times, then you'll have to do it again. And if you ingest some rare natural treasure, you might be able to reach consummate in 1 try. Ling Han came to a realization. In other words, the 3 minor tiers of the Ascending Origin tier don't have a clear boundary. In truth, it's just the purity of source power. When it reaches 100%, it'll be perfect. Small Tower released a laugh. This was its trademark mockery. Ling Han didn't mind. No wonder Ascending Origin tiers couldn't compare to Celestial Kings no matter how strong they were. Because this tier was only a transition, transforming origin power into source power. In terms of the height of regulations, they were far inferior to Celestial Kings, so no matter what, they couldn't reach or even surpass the level of Celestial Kings. However, as long as I advance into the Ascending Origin tier, and then temper myself with the void energy, I'll have a chance to rival Celestial Kings. He couldn't help but be filled with anticipation. Ascending Origin tier battling Celestial Kings, or even killing Celestial Kings, that would definitely be very shocking, right? Wow, another rock! Hunyo suddenly shouted in excitement. Sure enough, there was another burning rock ahead, but it was already about to be extinguished. Obviously, this flame wouldn't burn forever, and there was a limit. Ling Han extinguished the flame and then stored it into the Black Tower, not in a hurry to refine it. They continued to walk. In this deep mountain region, there weren't just the few of them who were bold. There were also other elites, such as the disciples of the Yellow Spring Heavenly Venerables line, but this Heavenly Venerable was different from Eternal Desolation Heavenly Venerable. He didn't have the habit of accepting disciples widely and only had a mere 3. Aside from Liao Kong, the others were actually the Yellow Spring Heavenly Venerable's eldest disciple, second disciple's disciple, or grand disciple. Ling Han and the others battled with wild beasts and also fought with humans. 2 months' time passed in a flash, and they first retreated from the mountain region to avoid their minds being affected and becoming bloodthirsty and murderous. That kind of substance was something that even Small Tower was wary of, so Ling Han didn't have the confidence to hide in the Black Tower. They came to the outside of the mountain region, and while waiting for the gray substance in their bodies to slowly disappear, they took out Chaos Source Stones and began to cultivate. This time, they obtained a total of 17 Chaos Source Stones, all of different sizes. The largest was as big as a millstone, while the smallest was only the size of a fist. However, size wasn't the only way to judge whether a Chaos Source Stone was good or bad. The purity of the source power within was also important. Some stones were big, but they didn't have much source power and couldn't even compare to the size of a fist. The volcano has stopped erupting, someone suddenly called out. Ling Han and the others also raised their heads. Indeed, the volcano that had been erupting all along had stopped, and no longer spewed out flames and magma. What replaced it were patches of black clouds that soared into the sky, extremely dense. This naturally caused another wave of looting to enter the mountain, because it was impossible for there to be any more Chaos Source Stones to erupt. Every piece that was picked up meant one less piece. Ling Han didn't enter the mountain again. He checked his body, and there was actually quite a lot of gray substance, which was slightly affecting his emotions. Thankfully, after leaving the mountain region, this substance also slowly decreased, but entering the mountain at this time would be courting death. Chapter 2365. A few months later, the fight on the Gold Cloud Mountain finally came to an end, and everyone dispersed. Liao Kong was responsible for bringing everyone here, but definitely did not have the leisure to bring everyone back. In any case, it was only a few years' journey, so everyone should just move their feet. Ling Han was not in a hurry to leave, but decided to stay for a while. He was very curious about this mountain. What was that gray substance that could make living beings go crazy, and even heavenly venerable treasures were wary of it? Was it also heavenly venerable tear? The gray substance in his body had completely dispersed, so he entered the mountain again, and only left when he felt like he was going crazy. Another 5 months later, Ling Han finally returned to normal. "You're playing with fire," Wally said. "Although this mysterious substance will dissipate, its influence on you is eternal. If you go in a few more times, I'm sure you won't be able to come out." Only now did Ling Han feel a chill run down his spine. He had never thought that this would actually be so dangerous. He thought for a moment, and decided to put this matter aside for now. When he advanced into Celestial King tier, he would go to the mountain peak. He was a curious person, and if he did not clarify this, he would feel uncomfortable. Ling Han, Hu Niu, and the Empress returned to the Heaven Desolation Mountain. On the way, the two women held the Chaos Source Rock and cultivated from time to time. They had already cultivated the Grand Cosmic Infinity Body, and could transform themselves into the flow of time, so there was no need to use the time cultivation room. But even if they were all Emperor stars, and had reached the peak stage of the Immortal Palace tier, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to transform their first source power. Even Ling Han was the same. This required a long accumulation of time, but how long had they stayed at this level? Cultivating to the late stage required a long accumulation of time, especially for leaping a major tier, which could not be rushed. However, the three of them, including Bewitching Maiden Ro, had all cultivated the time celestial physique, but Bewitching Maiden Ro was slightly weaker. A year had passed in the outside world, but they had already cultivated for 101,000 years. 4 years later, they returned to the Heaven Desolation Mountain. It took a year longer than planned, and that was because they had to stop frequently, which affected their speed. This time, because Ling Han had cultivated Heavenly Lord Eternal Desolation's secret technique, he was not affected by the mist and easily ascended the mountain. Who would have thought that they weren't the last ones to return? Blood Spear, Huai Jian, Moon in the Well, and the others were still on their way. Of the 5 newcomers, only Ling Han and Su Xing had returned. Ling Han did not care about the affairs of others. He continued to cultivate while looking for an opportunity to rescue another wave of humans. 9 days later, Shuegu returned and caused quite a commotion. Not only was he at the 9 Lotus stage, but he was also at the 2-leaf stage. This was too shocking. How could it be so fast? Wasn't cultivation realm honed bit by bit? It was only later that Ling Han found out that the Blood Spear tribe loved to feast on the blood essence of living beings. Normally, they would store it within their bodies. Once they broke through to the 9 Lotus stage, the blood essence would be dissolved and transformed into surging energy that boosted their cultivation. There was only one chance. However, those with inferior talents would only be able to advance from the early stage of the 1-leaf stage to the middle stage of the 9 Lotus stage. However, Shuegu was extraordinary. He managed to reach the 2-leaf stage in one go. He was incredibly powerful. No less than expected from a super Emperor star. Its evolution index was close to 11, and its explosive power was simply too terrifying. The first thing Shuegu did after returning was to challenge Ling Han. He had endured for too long. Previously, he had been slapped in the face by Ling Han for no reason, but no one had spoken up for him, causing him to hold his breath. The reason why he was able to rush to such a high level in one go was also because he had too much hatred in his heart, which had turned into a strong motivation. Otherwise, the eruption of essence blood was incomparably unbearable, and he would not have been able to withstand it long ago. Ling Han thought about it and agreed to spar with him. The time was set for 10 days later. He was confident that he could break through to the ascending origin tier within 10 days, but even if he reached the small perfection of the ascending origin tier, it would still be very difficult for him to match Shuegu. After all, Shuegu was also a super emperor star, and his level of heaven-defying was not inferior to his. But he could still draw on the energy of void children, and once the upper limit of the ascending origin tier was opened, what kind of heights could he reach? Consummate ascending origin tier, or even stronger? He was very much looking forward to it. Shuegu had no objections to this. 10 days was too short. Even if he used the acceleration of time, it would only be 30 years at most. At most, it would be enough for Ling Han to complete the breakthrough to the 9 Lotus stage. However, compared to him, the difference was too great. One had to know that the explosive power after advancing to the 9 Lotus stage was a unique ability of their race. He was certain that he would torture Ling Han until he was crippled. 3 days later, Jing Zhongyue also returned. She had successfully advanced to the 9 Lotus stage, and was in the middle stage of the 9 Lotus one-leaf stage. Although she could not compare to Shuegu, it was still very shocking. Clearly, she had also had a shocking opportunity. Another 2 days later, Huai Jian returned. His cultivation had also improved greatly, reaching the late stage of the 9 Lotus one-leaf stage. It was said that he had encountered a great opportunity in the Gold Cloud Mountain and obtained a chaos source rock of astonishing purity. However, none of them could compare to Shuegu. Previously, the 5 super emperor stars were almost evenly matched, but now, there was a clear difference. Shuegu was far ahead of them. Meanwhile, Ling Han, who used to be the strongest, was now the weakest. However, no one dared to underestimate him anymore. After all, this guy's physical skills were heaven-defying. Meanwhile, Ling Han was still cultivating bitterly. He had left his residence, but he was still in Mount Tianhuang. This mountain range was too vast. Inside his body, earth-shattering changes were taking place. He now knew why source power was so difficult to condense. For example, origin power was gaseous, while source power was liquid. What he needed to do was to liquefy the origin power. During this process, the origin power would become millions of times denser, and a single drop of source power would be able to explode with terrifying power. However, it was also incredibly difficult to compress origin power. If he was not careful, he would explode into pieces first. After experiencing hundreds and thousands of failures, Ling Han finally had the confidence to succeed. Rumble! Origin power roared. Naturally, they were unwilling to be compressed and destroyed, and they were very resistant. However, Ling Han did not care. After forcefully suppressing them, portions of origin power were squeezed together, piling up to 100,000 portions. Generally speaking, 10,000 portions of origin power could be compressed into a single drop of source power. However, Ling Han was ambitious. If he compressed 100,000 portions of origin power at the same time, he would be able to take a very large step forward in the ascending origin tier. He compressed it with all his might. Origin power was originally invisible, but under the compression of 100,000 times, it forcibly turned into mist. If he went one step further, the mist could liquefy into water. Ling Han roared in his heart. Wang! The mist completely condensed, and a drop of water quietly formed. Source power condensed. Ascending origin tier. Ling Han's eyes suddenly opened. Instantly, a shocking light shot out, as if it could penetrate heaven and earth. Quang! Thunderclouds gathered, and the heavenly tribulation had arrived. Even though he only condensed the first drop of source power, this step was a qualitative change, allowing him to step into a new world. He gave a long howl and roared at the sky, not fearing the heavenly tribulation. Come! He took out the scroll that could not be opened, used Wall's special technique, and extracted the energy within. Instantly, there was an even more terrifying tribulation might. Ling Han stopped, extracting a bit of power to temper himself, and immediately stopped. Once his ascending origin tier became a heavenly venerable tier tribulation, then he was definitely dead. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 2366. Once he advanced into the ascending origin tier, Ling Han's vitality instantly soared, opening up the space for evolution. Su Zi energy tempered his body, and his stamina began to soar. The advancement of one's realm should be very, very slow. It was like a slow fire stewing soup. However, virtual energy was the intrinsic power of the origin world. It far surpassed the height of the rules. Using it to refine a 9-lotus creature would naturally have an astonishing effect. His stamina began to soar. At first, it was only comparable to the early stage of ascending origin tier, but now it suddenly jumped to the middle stage, and there was no sign of it slowing down. Quang quang quang. The thunderclouds were dense, and lightning struck wildly, turning into multiple lightning giants that blasted at Ling Han. But for Ling Han's physique, this was insignificant. Under the tempering of Su Zi energy, Ling Han's indestructible heaven scroll also displayed greater might, increasing the toughness of his physique. As Ling Han battled the heavenly tribulation fiercely, he wandered at the edge of the cliff, continuously absorbing Su Zi energy to increase his stamina and physique. A day later, the heavenly tribulation passed, but the thunderclouds did not dissipate, still condensing and dispersing occasionally. This was because Ling Han was still using Su Zi energy to strengthen himself. The level of this power was too high. With every passing moment, Ling Han's strength would increase a bit, almost visible to the naked eye. The speed was too fast. Until the time limit of 10 days was up, he finally stopped, unsatisfied. He was immersed in the joy of increasing his strength, and now that he stopped, he felt disappointed. My current body technique should surpass the peak stage of ascending origin tier, Ling Han speculated. Ling Han deduced inwardly, according to Wall's life index, I should be a little over 4,300, but I'm still far from 5,000 points. If vitality reached 5,000, then he would be a celestial king. Ling Han walked back, not to his own residence, but directly to the sword transformation peak. This was the highest and steepest mountain in the Heaven Desolation Mountain, and from afar, it looked like a lonely sword piercing the clouds. Ling Han strode forward, his speed getting faster and faster. He didn't use the slightest bit of rule power, but when he took a step forward, a terrifying power naturally burst forth. Space seemed to be forcibly compressed, and he crossed an endless distance with a single step. Peng, peng, peng. He charged forward without stopping at all, and the mountain rocks in front of him were all shattered into pieces. Ling Han let out a long howl. His voice was like a heavy hammer that shook the rocks in the mountain and caused them to jump up. After which, they exploded one by one. He ascended Transforming Sword Peak, and only after speeding for a good while did he slow down his pace, strolling like a normal person. After more than an hour, Ling Han arrived at the top of the mountain. There was a huge platform there. Originally, there was a sharp point here, but it had been cut off. It was probably done on purpose so that it could be used in battle. There were already many people standing around the platform. The Empress's daughters, Little Terra was still in Bewitching Maiden Rose arms, Huai Jian, Moon in the Well, Zishuang, and so on. Basically all the disciples at Nina Lotus's level had arrived. Shuegu was eager for revenge, so he naturally arrived early. He still had the appearance of that bald man, his hands behind his back. As the mountain breeze blew, his clothes made a flapping sound. You came too late, he said coldly. Ling Han cracked a smile. So eager to get beaten up? Ha! Shuegu laughed dryly, but there was no humor in it. Do you still not know what cultivation level I am at now? A lotus bloomed between his brows. It had 9 petals and 2 leaves, and was as black as ink. I am 9 lotus 2 leaf, what about you? After confirming that Shueji's cultivation level was really 9 lotus 2 leaf, people like Feng Hailan and Si Huangyun all had solemn expressions. In terms of cultivation level, they had already been surpassed by this little junior brother. Ling Han smiled faintly. Similarly, a lotus appeared between his brows. It had 9 petals but only 1 leaf. Moreover, this leaf was very blurry, as if it had not formed yet. Huai Jian and the others naturally knew that Ling Han had indeed improved and entered 9 lotus. However, his cultivation level was only at the early stage of 9 lotus 1 leaf. In fact, it was only at the early stage of the early stage. The difference in cultivation level was obvious. Back then, they had been neck and neck, but now, Xueji's lead was extremely obvious. "I can still beat you up," Ling Han said. "How arrogant." Xuegu sneered. He knew that Ling Han's physical skills were shocking, reaching the peak of 9 lotus 2 leaf, or even the early stage of 9 lotus 3 leaf. However, he was a super emperor star, and his battle prowess was at the late stage or even peak of 9 lotus 3 leaf. "Tyrant, you were too arrogant before. I will take back everything you owe me." Xiao. He charged forward, as fast as lightning. Ling Han was calm as he casually threw out punches. He did not seem to be in a hurry, but every punch perfectly blocked Xueji's attacks. He was not at a disadvantage at all. What? Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at him. How was this possible? They were both super emperor stars. As long as one of them had a slight advantage in cultivation level, they would definitely win the battle. Ling Han let out a long roar. His fists were wrapped in lightning. This was the result of him combining his rule power with his physical skills, exploding with even more terrifying destructive power. His movements were bold, and the black lotus between his brows swayed as if it had come to life. This time, Ling Han had no interest in playing around with Xuegu. He went all out from the start, completely suppressing Xuegu. Everyone was speechless. Ling Han's strength was inconceivable to them. He had only just entered 9 lotus, but his battle prowess was already at the peak of 9 lotus 3 leaf. In fact, he was even slightly stronger than that. Once he reached 9 lotus 3 leaf, would he be able to fight even an ancestral king? Xuegu roared in anger. His face was filled with disbelief. He had suddenly made such a shocking improvement, but he was still no match for Ling Han. Moreover, he had been full of confidence that he could easily win and vent his anger. Who would have thought that things would turn out the opposite of what he had hoped for? Xuegu reverted to his original form, which was a blood bug that was less than a foot long. Xiao, 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 xiao. It flew at an astonishing speed, trying to break through the limits of Ling Han's vision. However, this was a complete waste of effort. Ling Han was now fighting with his physical skills. He did not need to use his rule power at all. This allowed his attack speed to be slightly faster than others in the same realm. Although it was only a little, for an emperor star, this was not a small difference. Bang! Ling Han's fist landed on the blood bug's body. Although the area of impact was small, the power of his fist was too domineering. The blood bug was blasted into a bloody mist, and Xuegu was in so much pain that he sent out a powerful divine will ripple. Ling Han had the upper hand. Who asked this guy to provoke him? If this wasn't Mount Tianhuang, he would have killed this stinky bug. Enough, enough. Everyone hurriedly went up to mediate. Ling Han threw a few more punches before finally stopping. After mediating the fight, everyone looked at Ling Han in a completely different light. This was a formidable opponent that they could not avoid. With Ling Han around, a large portion of their cultivation resources would definitely be taken away. Zi Shuang, on the other hand, was filled with regret. If she had known this would happen, she would have formed an alliance with Ling Han. Now that she brought up this matter again, it was obvious that Ling Han was strong and she was weak. She would definitely be the one at a disadvantage when it came to negotiating terms. Chapter 2368. Fuck, so serious? Ling Han smiled bitterly and said, "Senior, I've only just advanced into the ascending origin tier, and my shoulders are still very tender. I'm afraid I can't bear such a heavy responsibility." Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu shook his head. "Young man, you still don't know the pros and cons of this." He sighed and continued, "A dozen epochs ago, the foreign realm invaded. This Heavenly Venerable, 9-5, Sealed Emotion, and Blue Fire fought against the foreign Heavenly Venerables, But in the end, those three selfish guys were actually persuaded by the foreign realm and joined forces with them in order to transcend. What transcend? Ling Han was curious. Wu Lu was speechless. What kind of situation was this? And this brat was actually concerned about such a trivial matter. However, Ling Han looked like a curious baby, so he knew that it was best to satisfy this guy's curiosity. Otherwise, he might not be able to focus on anything else. First, do you know how heavenly venerables surpass the regulations? He asked. This was a very big question, and probably only a handful of people in the whole world could answer it. However, Ling Han was one of them. Because he was once the ruler of heaven and earth, he also obtained Wall's model and formula, and knew how to extract the power of heaven and earth. Extract the intrinsic power of heaven and earth to nourish oneself, turning it into a source of power, and not using regulations, Ling Han answered. Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu appeared slightly surprised. Though he asked, he didn't think a mere ascending origin tier could answer. He paused slightly and then said, though your understanding is not completely correct, it's not far off. However, every world has a unique power. This is the prerequisite for a plane to be born. And when a heavenly venerable achieves Tao, what they can grasp is definitely this unique power. Once they leave this world, their power will slowly dry up, and they will fall from the position of a heavenly venerable. Ling Han was surprised. This was something Wall hadn't told him before. He nodded. This is like a normal person. Without the supplement of food, their body will slowly weaken. This analogy is very vivid. Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu nodded. However, heavenly venerables are too powerful, and this process will be endlessly long. However, no matter how long as they still rely on this power, it is unavoidable. An Empyrean is like a tree that needs to take root on its own surface. It's closely related. Ling Han was puzzled. Since that's the case, shouldn't the 9-5 Celestial Sovereign and the others be protecting the immortal region? If the Celestial Realm was destroyed, then the unique power of the Celestial Realm would disappear. How would the three Celestial Lords, 9-5, Feng Qing and Qin Hua be able to roam the world? Although heavenly venerables are synonymous with the strongest, heavenly venerables also have differences in strength and levels, said heavenly venerables leisurely. Ling Han knew this because a heavenly venerate's life index should be 15,000 points. However, heavenly venerate Eternal Desolation's life index was close to 16,000 points, which made Vale feel terrified. Dare I ask, Senior, how many levels are there in the Empyrean realm? Heavenly Venerable Joyless shook his head. I don't know either. Ling Han couldn't help being speechless, only feeling that this Empyrean was quite amusing. This Empyrean has only been to two planes, the immortal region and the foreign realm. However, according to this Empyrean's knowledge, there are many other planes with countless powerful existences, said Heavenly Venerable Joyless. The following are all my guesses. Grasping a unique power should be the first step to becoming a heavenly venerable. However, apart from this power, there are other powers in the world. These are the foundations that form the entire world. That unique power can only be said to be a special characteristic of the world. Grasping another type of basic power should be the second step to becoming a heavenly venerable. Once one reaches the second step, a heavenly venerable can truly transcend and no longer be bound to their original plane. They can be high and mighty in any plane. Ling Han nodded. Apart from the unique power, all other powers were universal. In that case, they could naturally go to a plane and extract the power of the heaven and earth of that plane. They wouldn't have to worry about exhausting it one day. The agreement between 9-5 and the foreign realm is that when the immortal region's plane is devoured, those heavenly venerables will extract the power of the immortal region's core together, said Heavenly Venerable Joyless. There are only two possibilities to absorb such power. First, when the world has just been created, everything is still in its initial state, and this power will be exposed to the outside world. However, when the world has just been created, no living being has reached the level of a heavenly venerable, so it is naturally impossible to do so. Second, when a plane is destroyed. Ling Han's body trembled. Those three heavenly venerables didn't hesitate to destroy the entire immortal region for their own transcendence. Heavenly Venerable Joyless sighed. Back then, this Empyrean parted ways with them because of this. Our paths are different, and we cannot work together. It wasn't just him. Heavenly Venerable Fate-born had also faced off against the foreign realm Heavenly Venerables alone. In the end, he had no choice but to merge with the Tao and destroy the connection point between the two worlds. Otherwise, the immortal region would have long since ceased to exist. Ling Han's heart stirred. Then now, Heavenly Venerable Eternal Desolation is going to take another step and become a second step Heavenly Venerable. This old fellow's vitality was close to 16,000 points. Once he reached it, wouldn't he become a second step Heavenly Venerable? Heavenly Venerable Joyless shook his head. That is impossible. However, if he can completely refine me, then he will be able to obtain the unique power of the immortal region. He will be able to march straight into the immortal region and go on a killing spree. The strength of a plane wasn't supported by one or two powerhouses, but by countless living beings. If the foreign realm wanted to devour the immortal region, it was very simple. They just had to kill most of the living beings. Then, the world would be heavily injured, and it would become extremely weak. Then, it would be easily devoured and fused. If Heavenly Venerable Eternal Desolation wasn't suppressed by the immortal region's power of heaven and earth, or at least not so severely, then he would be able to go on a killing spree. In any case, those three from the immortal region wouldn't stop him. Just him alone would be enough to kill most of the immortal region. When that time came, it would be the day of the immortal region's destruction. Heavenly Venerable Joyless' previous words were so severe. Clearly, he wasn't exaggerating on purpose. However, Ling Han was shocked. He said, "Senior is going to be refined by Heavenly Venerable Eternal Desolation?" Heavenly Venerable Joyless nodded. Back then, my original body fought against many and risked his life to shatter the connection point between the two realms. He succeeded, but my original body was also heavily injured and captured by the foreign realm. Eternal Desolation is one of the top existences among the foreign realm's heavenly venerables. He has great ambition and great wisdom. He wants to refine my original body and obtain the heaven and earth power within my body. If he succeeds, he will be able to cultivate the first step to perfection, and he won't have to fear the immortal region's suppression. Ling Han nodded. After grasping the immortal region's unique power, Heavenly Venerable Eternal Desolation would be equivalent to someone from the immortal region. Although Heavenly Venerables would still be targeted by the world, the situation was completely different from an invasion by a foreign realm's Heavenly Venerable. Those who can become Heavenly Venerables are all peerless geniuses and supreme powerhouses. Eternal Desolation wants to refine my original body, but this is a double-edged sword. He can also be refined by my original body, said Heavenly Venerable Joyless. However, under the suppression of this plane, my original body can only barely protect myself and prevent eternal desolation from succeeding. But after resisting for so long, my original body's power is already becoming weaker and weaker. I can't hold on much longer. This was because Heavenly Venerable Joyless had only taken the first step. After leaving the immortal region, he could no longer extract that unique power. He was definitely becoming weaker and weaker, especially when he had to fight against a powerhouse like Heavenly Venerable Eternal Desolation. Chapter 2369. It could be said that it was already a miracle that Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu could persist until now. It had already been a dozen epochs. Ling Han was filled with admiration and bowed to Heavenly Venerable Wu. Senior's integrity is brilliant, I admire you. If it weren't for Heavenly Venerable Wu Li's sacrifice a dozen epochs ago, would he still be where he was now? To say nothing of him, even the Heavenly Venerable born fate couldn't possibly appear. History had already been rewritten. Heavenly Venerable Wu Li's expression was solemn. I can't persist for long, so you must return to the celestial realm immediately and ask a ninth heaven celestial king to interfere with eternal desolation. With my cooperation, we should be able to foil his scheme. Ling Han couldn't help but grimace. I can't return to the celestial realm because the connection point between the two realms is now filled with energy storms. What? Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu couldn't help but exclaim. Ling Han added the details of his escape from the celestial realm. Previously, he only said that he was forced to flee, but didn't mention the process of his escape. Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu was speechless. Ling Han was only in the ascending origin tier, and even if Heavenly Venerable Eternal Desolation was completely unguarded, Ling Han couldn't possibly get within 300 meters of him. He would have long been obliterated by the terrifying power of a Heavenly Venerable. Could it be that this was the only way? He was only a spiritual mark and didn't have any power at all, and this was something he could barely pull out while fighting against Heavenly Venerable Eternal Desolation with his full strength, and could only manifest once in a while. He just happened to see the scene of Ling Han abducting human slaves, and thus became curious about him. He observed carefully, and when he discovered Ling Han's actions the second time, he took the risk and came out to test him. If Heavenly Venerable Eternal Desolation knew of this, he would definitely suffer an even stronger suppression, and it would be impossible for him to even split out a sliver of his divine sense. But Ling Han couldn't return to the celestial realm, and his divine sense had no battle prowess, so wouldn't that mean he couldn't do anything? Even as a Heavenly Venerable, he couldn't help but feel a sense of despair. Ling Han gritted his teeth and said, I might have a way. He decided to risk it and use the last of the Black Tower's power. Otherwise, if the immortal domain was destroyed, he and the girls would become rootless duckweeds, without any kin to turn to. After spoiling Emperor Heng Huang's plans, the old man was just putting up a smokescreen. What research that allowed the people of the alien realm to be unafraid of the celestial realm's power of heaven and earth? In reality, it was just him. At that time, when he entered the celestial territory alone, he would definitely be able to obtain benefits that other celestial venerables could not imagine. Ling Han believed that only when it came to the matter of invading the immortal realms did all the Grand Empyreans agree. But to say that they loved each other? Even if you beat Ling Han to death, he wouldn't believe it. It was simply the greatest joke in the world. This was where the greater good lay. Ling Han made a firm decision. Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu shook his head. It was not that he was underestimating Ling Han, but what could an ascending origin tier do? Junior has an Empyrean treasure. When I activate it, I can display the strength of a quasi-Empyrean. Ling Han revealed his trump card. Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu was surprised. Kid, you actually have such fortune. An Empyrean treasure tool added with the divine demon sword that was still a celestial tool. Who knew there might be 2 Empyrean treasure tools in the future? He began to consider, and only nodded after a while. This matter might be feasible. We have to make a good plan. The old and the young did not begin immediately, because Heavenly Venerable Wu Li's divine sense could not be visible for too long. If Heavenly Venerable Heng Huang discovered that he still had a sliver of autonomous ability, then the plan would fall through. And Ling Han could not stay here forever. The matter of a large number of humans disappearing again was about to be exposed, so he had to hurry back to his residence. However, he now also knew that the existence of these humans would not affect Heavenly Venerable Heng Huang in any way. He was only using these humans as a cover, and his intention was to conceal the existence of Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu. Presumably, when Wu Lu was injured, Heavenly Venerable Heng Huang just happened to pick up his corpse, and did not let the other Heavenly Venerables of the foreign realm know. Otherwise, a Heavenly Venerable corpse would definitely cause the Heavenly Venerables to fight over it. Even if Heavenly Venerable Heng Huang was stronger, he would at most be able to snatch a bit more, and obtain a leg, an arm, or something like that. Ling Han returned to his residence, and did not tell the 3 women about this matter so that they would not worry. He only told them to be prepared, and that he would leave this place at any time. Of course, there was also Wally. The knowledge that this guy grasped was too useful. A large number of human slaves disappeared again, and this naturally caused another uproar in the Heaven Desolate Mountains. Where did this madman come from, to actually come to the Heaven Desolate Mountains to behave atrociously twice? The 2 ancestral kings conducted a thorough search, and even every heavenly venerable disciple could not escape suspicion. They demanded that they hand over their spatial god tools for investigation. However, Ling Han had the Black Tower, and as long as it was not a heavenly venerable, they would not come out, so he easily muddled through. Now, the entire heaven-desolate mountains once again entered a state of martial law. The two ancestral kings both held their breaths, and even had the intention of inviting a few of the 18 Lotus's senior and junior brothers back to investigate this matter. Ling Han's emotions were calm. In any case, he would not stay here for long, and once he used the Black Tower, he would definitely kill a few Emperor stars of the foreign realm, such as Shuegu. Killing humans in front of him caused Ling Han's killing intent to boil. Another dozen or so days later, Heavenly Venerable Wu Le finally appeared again, and began to discuss with Ling Han. Mainly, he said that he would arrange the details of Ling Han's operation and where he would go after he succeeded. Ling Han planned to go to the Xian'an plain, because there was no turning back. However, Heavenly Venerable Wu Le shook his head. I am already at the end of my rope. After I escape, I will send you back to the celestial realm. The energy storm will certainly cause serious damage to me, but I do not care anymore. Senior. Ling Han's expression changed. Heavenly Venerable Wu Li's stance was that he intended to follow in the footsteps of Heavenly Venerable Yuanqing, merging with the Tao and destroying the connection point between the two realms, giving the celestial realm more time. There is no need to say more. I have made up my mind, Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu said resolutely. Ling Han only had the right to bow to him respectfully. The older generation of Heavenly Venerables did not only have selfish people like Jiu Wu and Feng Qing, but also people of noble character and unquestionable integrity like Wu Lu and Yuan Sheng. Brat, you can do it too. Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu looked at Ling Han with a smile. He admired Ling Han very much. How many people like him could survive so well after escaping to the foreign realm alone? The two of them appreciated each other. Though their cultivation levels were as different as heaven and earth, and their ages were the same, they became firm comrades because of their common beliefs. After discussing all the details, Ling Han made the final preparations. He put the three women and Little Terror into the Black Tower, and made Wally turn into a pendant and hang it on his body. He prepared to move the next night. There was a difference of day and night in the heaven-desolate mountain. That was the method of Heavenly Venerables, but the day was 3 days long, and the night was only 1. The day passed quickly, and Ling Han moved out. This time he did not hide. A sliver of Heavenly Venerable Hang Huang's divine sense was still wandering in some corner, and his main body was refining Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu with all his might, definitely not paying attention to the outside world. As for the rest, he only needed to use the power of the Black Tower to suppress them. Tyrant, what are you doing outside so late at night? With a furious rebuke, Feng Hailon appeared. He looked at Ling Han coldly. Could it be that you are that great thief? The latter sentence was naturally him deliberately slandering Ling Han. Ling Han broke into a smile. That's right, that's me. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.